Good morning. Well, actually, technically it's afternoon now. We're gonna do a bit more of my square. When we left off yesterday, I was slightly irate with life and the universe that I find myself sitting in. So today we are going to do some more, because I really want to get to the end of this quarter so that I may burn all of my spangled bobbins. I will keep them, of course, but I feel putting them in a box in the far distant corner of the loft may be the right answer. It's really sad because the bobbin with the spangle doesn't move. It is a glorious thing. And it is so infuriating to work with. Ladies, gents, if you use spangled bobbins, hats off to you. How do you keep your cool? Can't do it myself. Really can't. But this is why they make different types of bobbins. Now, obviously, traditionally, back in the day, many of the bobbins were not invented, but they were locale base use, and I haven't entirely, researched lace of the entire globe, but it does seem, much like crochet and knitting and everything else, that there are region-specific things. And so, for example, I'm looking at my pile of lace books, and now I would like to think that Honiton and Torsion are British. There's also Bucks Point, which I also think is British, but maybe they're not, because, well, many Americans have used British names for places over there, and so, you have Reading over there. So do we. We have the original Reading. But your Reading is also close to other places that, well, it's not close to in the UK. And so the fact that we have names for things and you have reused them muddies this. But obviously, Honiton is a place, and Buckinghamshire is a place. So I would like, and there's also Beds Blaze, so that's Bedfordshire. I would like to think that they're British. Now, Honiton uses really tiny spindles, very much like the spangled bobbins that I've got, but without the spangles and pointier ends. And those bobbins are lighter than a feather, perfectly cylindrical, and I use them for the square on the screen. And I really struggled with them because they tangled so much that I ended up using little elastic bands to keep the pairs together. And then in keeping the pairs together, you made an oval shape, which meant that they didn't roll around so much. So this worked out pretty well. It was a bit of a faff, having to take off an elastic band, do some work with it, and then maybe put the elastic band on a pair the other end. But it did mean that you found yourself in control. And to be honest, it did work out pretty well. The spangles achieve a similar kind of thing without the elastic bands. And as I showed yesterday, and will show again in a minute, an advantage of spangles is that you can put a safety pin or ribbon or some kind of tie through, and they will remain in order. This is a glorious thing. But the spangles generally are on wire, and the wire loop at the bottom is too big. It's just annoying me. It's so much wider than the bobbin that it means that instead of having the 4 to 5 millimetre wide bobbin, it's like 1.5 centimetres wide or more, depending on the beads on the wire. And trying to juggle those and not have the spangles catch on each other is just driving me insane. So today my patience, potentially, will also be short. But we find ourselves where we do. Our choices are what we made. And going forward, as I said earlier, we will not be using spangled bobbins. We will then, of course, be annoyed by the tangling of bobbins. But I just can't be doing with the spangles. And I think this was what put me off as a child, was the idea and the technical making was well within my grasp. The spangles, it is a herd of cats and not one that I intend to continue. So, time for moving over to my lace pillow. Now, this doesn't look like my lace pillow at the moment, excuse my dogs. They have decided that because I gave them a biscuit of being good, to put rockets up themselves and tear around the house and destroy everything within their paths. Hopefully they will go to sleep shortly. So, this doesn't look like my lace pillow. This is because I have put on it a cover cloth. And here are some of my bobbins on a thing. Let me move those. If I peel back my cloth, there is my lace, exactly how we left it yesterday. I wanted to do some more last night, but I did decide that half the point I'm doing this is to document what is going on. So here we are, back where I was. By the way, one thing that isn't necessarily hugely obvious here and now, and was only obvious in the photo that I took yesterday when I wanted to check how it was looking, is if I zoom in, it doesn't really zoom in enough, but around about here somewhere, there is a tiny mistake. I've said this a number of times. The problem with the internet is you often post your work gloriously. You go, hey, I'm doing this, I'm really proud of myself, look at me go. Yeah, now all the errors show. They have little neon signs kind of going, here, here, here. And it doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter how big it is. You could have stared at it for days. No, can't find anything wrong with it. Snap, post it on the internet. Oh look, here, I messed up. Almost before it's finished posting. There is something, and it is, frankly, the easiest way to find your mistakes. Post it on the internet. You will see them immediately. You do not need someone else to point them out because, well, you'll have seen them. And it seems a very strange way to find your mistakes. But I need to answer a message to somebody. Hang on one moment. No, I don't want to get nitro. Someone's just asked me what is throw or pick knitting. Those are the universal terms. I'm sorry, that's confusing for me. So I do apologise. Never mind. This is the problem with the common language that splits the world. So, let's get back to business. We are needing some bobbins. So, let me grab my... Oh, now it's mated with my phone. Let me grab my pin of bobbins and extract 2 more. So, how is everyone doing today? It's Saturday, mostly, I think, for most people. Oh, look. The bobbins have come undone. I spent so long winding these up. So, yes, it is the weekend. We are mostly free from our Monday to Friday jobs. Maybe not. Some more than others, I'm sure. Some of us work the weekend, some don't. I fortunately am not, so that's always a good thing. Right, a pair of bobbins. Now, was that the pins I was using yesterday? I think it is. They're the same as the other pins, so it shouldn't. It's like you have 2 identical pin pots in front of you. Which were the pins I used yesterday? Why does it matter? They're the same. So let's move these down, because we'd finished that row of rose ground. We don't need you. Yes, we do. We need you. And now we need 2 more pairs of bobbins. She says, having put the bobbins down and only got out 1. Never mind. Pin, pin, pin. Bobbin, bobbin, bobbin. Bobbin. Let's get the other bobbin then. So yes, the plan of the day is to do more of this, see how far we get. I have decided that whatever the outcome, of course, is we will be not maintaining these spangled bobbins for my sanity. These bobbins have tangled themselves together, and I am struggling to untangle the bobbins. Not quite sure why it's so hard to untangle the bobbins, but apparently it is. There we go. As I say, it's amazing when you consider that they're all kept in place, and then you pull them apart and they've all tangled. So, how do they tangle when they can't move? Sometimes things seem to defy the laws of physics. This is a known problem in the crafting world. And computer cables. Computer cables are the other things that defy physics, by the sheer fact that you put down layers of cables, you can tape them to the floor, and next time you look, they're a tangled mess. You taped them to the floor. How did they tangle? The answer is because they could. So let's... As we can see, we are getting rather short on space, so I may have to stack some bobbins, but never mind. So we need to make the corner, because these are new bobbins. Really, dog? My dogs are being dogs. I love them dearly, but they're in the way already. Never mind. So, let's get my 4 pairs of bobbins. So, we need to do in the middle. I didn't move my table. I was going to. Never mind. Because already my back's gone. Didn't we do this yesterday? Is there no reason why we're doing this today? Because of course, previously when I've been doing this, I haven't had to have a camera and stuff in the way. And so, by having the camera as part of it, it needs to be at a reasonable angle. This means, of course, it needs to be, in this case, behind. And by doing that, I therefore have more bulk behind my table. What I previously have done is put my lace pillow on a table stroke, lap stroke, whatever I felt was necessary for the kind of pillow I was using, and worked with it resting on my keyboard stand, so I would watch the internet while doing some lace making. And this was very comfortable. But of course, can't really put my camera behind it then. And I got this beautiful ring light, don't get me wrong. It is a thing of beauty. And it has a mounting for my camera. So my camera is slap bang in the middle of my ring light, so it gets good lighting. That was the wrong way around. It gets good lighting, and you get to see what I'm doing quite well. Whereas, obviously, normally it would be I would just have a light and I could do my lace making. And, well, it does mean you can be in a much more comfortable, sensible place. Even though I am sitting far squarer to my pillow and in a much more practical place than I was yesterday. Small black dog has taken up residence in his usual spot. But it's just, my back's still not quite recovered from the other week. So this may not be the longest of streams, but I may do a bit more later if I can sort myself out a bit. So those are those two. In the middle. I have tried to make a couple of adjustments to the stream. One thing I've noticed, and I don't know whether it's just me, but even though while I watch, I'm watching a kind of a stream overview, so it tells me that there are bit rates and people, and shows me the chat, and I can see the screen that's visible to you, although it's kind of like 2 inches square, but I can see the screen that's visible to you and all this kind of stuff. So I have a good overview of what's going on. Why can't I find this hole? There we go. But what is not possible from this is I can't really download and watch my own stream while streaming it. So I can't see the actual version of what you see. And I noticed in the YouTube videos, and I don't know whether it's just my computer or anything, but if I look at the videos that get uploaded, because while I'm streaming this, it's also saving it to my hard disk so that I can upload it to YouTube later. And the problem I'm seeing is that even though I'm recording it locally, so it's not Twitch sends me a copy of what I did, this is me recording the raw stuff that I am trying to send to Twitch. When I watch if I look towards the end of my own videos, if I click ahead, it shows the frame of, my hands have moved and, all the rest of it, as you'd expect. But if I try and watch the video, all I get is the audio. And I don't know whether that's a YouTube thing, I don't know whether that's a me thing, I need to check the local video for that, I guess. But it just means that I worry that after a while, you guys are not seeing what I'm doing as I do it. I'm also aware that sometimes I ask a question and it feels like 10-15 minutes later I'm getting the answer in chat, and it should be only a few seconds. It literally should be, a couple of seconds at best. And so I don't quite understand why it's so much of a delay, because I used to stream before. I am not a good streamer, I know that. But I used to stream before, and I used to stream a game I was playing. And I could have fairly real-time conversations with people, because I would say something, they would type something back, and I'd answer it. So it was a bit disjointed, but there was a real-time conversation. Whereas with these streams, and I don't know why it would be different, we don't seem to be quite together in sync. So I know that when someone popped in yesterday, she said hello, and I obviously said hello back, and I asked her what she was doing. Now maybe she, had to get to the end of what she was doing, so there was a bit of a delay because she was crafting while watching. But it's not the first time, it's just a good example. It just felt like I'd done and said so much that I'd moved on in the conversation so far that almost the answer was like, oh, why would you say that now? It's almost like back in the days where if you had a pen pal, it would take 7 days to get there and 7 days to get back. So by the time you got the letter, and they'd kind of go, oh yes, I totally agree. Thank you for that, dog. What did I ask? I've forgotten. It's been 2 weeks. Seriously, crackhead? She got on the sofa, banging the table, which was the bang you heard, came up, head-butted me in the back, and got off again. And now she's got on again. This is why I call her crackhead. Because she just cannot sit still, and she just can't. She's just not able to. It's too much for her. And it's really annoying. He's got off now. There is nothing for you to be doing. You can't get up the other side, Rory. There is no other side. You were behind me, which is where you would be, even if you came up the other side of me. They are going to be annoying today, I can tell. It's because the sun's out. It's because for the first time in quite a while, the day does not, outside is not all doom and gloom. So even though the door's open, they can go outside as much as they want, and there's things for them to do. It is the frustrations of my dogs being my dogs, really. It's what they do best. No, Rory, there isn't another side you can come up. There is not a man. So yes, I do apologise. Obviously, half my stream seems to be me talking to or about my dog, because, well, they're very much part of my little world here. So, I was talking about this to someone yesterday. While I was working yesterday morning before stream, because obviously I do have a job, I found myself, my phone went ping, and it said, hey, somebody's making Lace live. And I kind of went, awesome, I'd love to watch that. Have it on in the background while I do some work. Because it is kind of therapeutic, and it's also interesting watching someone else. I also found it kind of disappointing. They had 109 viewers or something, and I felt sorry for them. Now, don't get me wrong, slightly envious that they had 109 viewers, but they had a title, Bobbin Lace Live kind of thing, a bit like I have. Nearly every single one of the people coming into her chat, what you doing? Rory! Sorry about that. You can't come up there. There is no gap. My arm is on the arm of the chair. There is no room for a dog. And literally every single one, what are you doing? And then everyone was all, oh, this is so magical. You're so clever. This is, and I kind of felt it was like, well, what were you expecting? You joined a stream entitled Making Bobbin Lace Live, so all these people can't be lace making people or people who have some idea of what that means, because, well, they're asking what you're doing. And she was quite clearly making a bookmark. And you kind of find yourself going, well, if you don't know what she's doing and the stream's called What I'm Doing, and she's literally, you would get a line, someone will type in, what you doing? She would answer it. And while she's explaining, this is bobbin lace, bloody, bloody, blah, someone would come along and go, what you doing? It was just really weird to me that so many people who didn't know what she was doing was coming to view her stream, and slightly irritated that they almost wouldn't let her get on with it, because they were constantly, it'd be a bit like painting my black cat in the cellar. What you doing? Well, it says painting my cat in the cellar. What part of this was unclear? And so I've actually felt quite sorry for her in the end, because they either were gushing about how great she was and how, oh, this looks so impossible and all those kinds of things, which it does look kind of impossible because it is a bit voodoo-y, let's truly be honest. But it was kind of two extremes. The, oh, this is magical, to what on earth is this? And how, it just seemed a little odd to me. And so I felt for her, because all she seemed to do for at least half her stream was have to explain she was making bobbin lace. And very few people actually asked anything specific about the bobbin lace she was making. It's not like they said, oh, what makes this different? What technique is this? Are there different techniques or anything kind of education? It would just be, what is this? Well, it's, as I said, it's this. So I did feel a little sorry for her. But she was very happy throughout her stream, and she was very good, and clearly not me. So, because of course I get moody and grumpy, so that's clearly a thing. So yeah, I did. It just struck me as it was a side I hadn't expected to see with something like that. I mean, I have seen it from a gaming perspective, sort of like someone posts, hey, I'm streaming, I don't know, World of Warcraft, and someone inevitably joins the chat and goes, what game is this? Well, it kind of says, dude. But yeah, it was weird for me. It was also weird watching from the other side, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, but it was kind of weird at the same time. So I'm shuffling the bobbins over to try and get them in a bit more so that I can have the working set nearer the middle, because this is, well, practical. Did I get the pin? Yay, I got the pin. Shouldn't be so hard, but it is. Because as I said to you yesterday, I find some of these things a little weird. So yes, nearly that came off the pin there. So I am going to have to do something to stack some of these bobbins out of the way. Because obviously, like, all from about here onwards, I don't need these bobbins right now. So what I will do is I will get my cloth that I was using earlier. As I said, normally, I said explained previously, normally when doing lace making, you use navy kind of dark coloured cloths. Blue is generally advised on the grounds that it is a colour that people brains find relaxing and eyeballs find relaxing. which is why they're not highly patterned, which you do see with bolster pillows that sometimes they're highly patterned. To be honest, I'd have to put a cover over that, because tiny bins and tiny threads in amongst a busy pattern, especially a strong pattern. If it was quite a subtle pattern, it probably wouldn't be so bad. But if you're talking kind of like, summer dress kind of level, bright, joyful colours, it would just give me a headache. So what I need to do now is, this is something that there seems to be a little bit of a dispute over, and I don't have my pin pusher. That finger is that normally I do this where I can actually see the row of pins that I'm pushing a little more clearly. Finger pushing. This is why, of course, you end up with sore fingers, because you're trying to push bins with the finger rather than a little metal object that is frankly designed for pushing bins. But what I can do is I can push some of these pins down. Why do you push pins down more? A, it means you can see a bit more of what you're doing, but also this layer, right? It doesn't matter if I gain a few extra with that finger technique, to be honest. Let me get my pin pusher. One moment, please. Dog butt in one. Should have planned this, shouldn't I? Sorry about that. Right, so now I've got my magic pin pusher. I of course still can't see because they are over there, but I can push you to pins. Now, why am I doing this? Because, well, A, it lets you see a bit better, but also it's so that you may steal pins from earlier in the section. And what this also means is that it becomes flatter. Which is a great and glorious thing. So I kind of can't see you, but picking you up, and potentially you. Can't really see around the other side because the pins are in the way. So got pins for this one. What I really want to do is, you have to leave some pins in so that you can gain attention, so that the tension on the threads, so that when you kind of stroke them a little bit, so that you don't end up with kind of loops and unnecessary sagginess elsewhere. But you can steal some pins. Now, I think you are a non-stealable pin. But then, for example, instead of me getting pins out the pot, you can get pins out of the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shuffle these around a bit more, because these are the ones I'm using. Because of course what's happening at the moment is I add two, and then two on this side are discarded for temporarily purposes basis. Because, well, they're no longer needed to work down further on this rose ground. Although, to be fair, we've only got one more row of rose ground, so am I doing this for a good reason? Maybe I need to ask myself that. Let me have a sip of Coke and think about that a bit more. It is a good plan to restart reusing the pins. That is a good plan. Because, to be honest, you only need a handful of pins. As a holder of shape, because of course one thing, as you may have noticed, we do not knot. Therefore, if for example I took this particular bobbin and pulled really hard and there were no pins, it would distort its whole path previously in work. So you need the lower pins to maintain the shape, because obviously if I gave this a small tug, obviously it affects this end more than it would affect a earlier point in the work. So it is an important thing to consider. I'm going to pop some of these in. Like that. It is an important factor to have some pins to keep that stability while you work. But, for example, while this is let's call it a raw edge at the moment because it's still got working bobbins, I could easily pull out this earlier set of pins at no detriment to the work. So if I cover those a bit, and then I can lift these on here a bit. Now the problem is they then mate with the pins because, well, Murphy's Law applies, right? And I can shuffle these around a bit more than I was. So you are now shuffled, and we can do our last layer of rose ground. There, that's a bit better. I haven't angled these very well, but I don't need them for long, so it's not the end of the world. Push a little bit more for strength. There we go. So we now need to do in the middle. So back to the video, I've set this, instead of 60 frames or whatever it thought it was trying to do, I've tried to make sure it's only doing 30 frames a second, which is not a lot, but it does seem my rather poor internet maybe is struggling with sending much more than that. Yesterday, yeah, it's still about the same speed, to be honest. 4 to 5k a second. I mean, that's really not a lot. Sorry, 4 to 5 megaseconds. Depends if that's bits or bytes, I guess. But it is quite disturbing that it's struggling to do this. And there's not a lot I can do about it because my internet speed is the fastest available to me currently. And believe me, if they ever make a fast one, I will be on it faster than, well, you can imagine. My old house, when they introduced, well, frankly, this level of speed of internet, I almost ordered it before it was public knowledge that the speed was available, because they actually said, it was almost how did you know you could do that? Well, we basically looked at the page every day and went, can we have it yet? And, well, on the day in question, it said yes. So we clicked yes, please. And it was kind of like, you are the first people in the new cabinet. And it's like, that's great news. Can you stop talking about it and poke it quicker? You know, it was... but rather annoyingly in Old House, the speed of internet I get here is 80 down and 20 up. Well, that's the speed I pay for. The actual speed that they expect me to get out of that is about half. Whereas in my old house, I actually got 80-20. And so I had no real issue streaming because, well, I had a decent speed. Now, here's a thought for you. If you are not British, think about your internet speed. Most countries, other than England, even some of the poorer countries, have better internet speeds than we do. Our government have done a thing where they want internet to be available to everybody, but they deemed 2 meg was enough. Now it is. I mean, a connection's better than no connection. You know, no one's going to disagree with that. But in a world where fibre and 1 gig connections, you know, are more prevalent, I mean, it depends what you're going to do with it. For Granny who wants to look at BBC News once a day, you know, 2 meg's fine. But if you do anything else, if you want to stream a movie, if you want to play a game, if you want to well, frankly, do anything, chances are 2 meg down and, a handful of K up ain't going to cut it. It's back in the good old days of 33.6 modems, right? There is a frustration where you find yourself going, it's not that, oh, well, I'm more important, I need faster speed than that. It's not that. It's just that the world is so obsessed now with, everything needs to be 60 frames every game. When back in early 2000s, a game was deemed to be smooth almost if you had 20 frames a second or more. Because back then, they claimed the human eye couldn't really tell apart anything more than 30 frames a second. These days, oh, well, it's got to really be 120. Well, 20 years ago, we were telling people that you couldn't really see much more than 30 frames a second. So, surely 60 would be more than plenty, let alone, 120. Now, there are people who claim that they can tell, and maybe they can. I'm not them. I would wonder why they would choose to lie if that was the case. But how do you... If you can see that, surely you're a minority. It's like there are people in the world who can see more colours than others. They are deemed to have like a fourth colour receptor. But they're a minority. And it is alleged that it is more likely women can see more colour than men, which is why women are always well, that's this blue and that's the other blue and that's... Whereas blokes kind of go, it's blue. I am much more of it's blue, it's brown. Or I will go to dark, medium, greenier, pinker, purplier, whatever, right? But I do not carry all the names of the colours in my head because, well, I don't need to. I just need to know if it's the colour I want or not, and whether it matches the colour I want or not. What it's called is not important. And so I'm a bit more blokey in the whole kind of colour arena. But it is an interesting fact that while you do get colourblind women, if by default it is primarily men who are colourblind. You get women who carry the gene and don't have it, but it is primarily men who are colourblind. I have met a colourblind woman, but they are somewhat less common. Whereas I've met quite a few colourblind men over the years. So yes, it's colour is quite interesting when it comes to that, but never mind. Right, let's keep going. I noticed my music still seems to be playing today. That's a good thing. That was slightly annoying yesterday. I don't know what happened to it. It was definitely there at the start of the stream, but it seemed to disappear later. I don't remember doing anything to terminate said music. In case you're wondering, music on the stream that you'll hear every time, because it's not free music, but it's music that we are free to use for streaming purposes. So it is copyrighted music, but it is not limited use music. It is one that they have deemed that you are free to use for streaming. Is from a game called Heartbound by Pirate Software, and Pirate Software is not about pirating software, as the name strongly implies. It is more just a name. Ooh, I'm a pirate. and I make software, not I steal software and will teach you how to do it. So he is not. It is a very ethical company, and interestingly enough, he streams most days. He's not streaming today because he feels like a slug, and didn't want to get out of bed, and I can relate to that. That's definitely a feeling that we've all had at some point. And he's a bit run down at the moment, so he's done that a couple of times this week. He normally streams most days but Thursday, so I tend to have him on like a radio show while I work. So because to be honest, he doesn't talk that much about game development. He gets lots of people asking him questions and how to handle this, and he's just generally entertaining. So I watch a lot of that. So and he does do one very, very awesomely good thing, which is why I have them as a stream that can show up on my page, which is Ferret Software. Now, Ferrets, he runs a ferret rescue in Washington, and he is one of the largest there, and so he's got a big handful of ferrets, and you can watch his ferrets 24/7. And part of the beauty of his ferret thing is the fact that this 24/7 camera is paying the bills of keeping and running the rescue. And that is a glorious thing. Just think about that. By having a couple of cameras up, and there is a bit of work that goes on. So there's a lady, and in fact they've got another one now. But there's a lady who looks after them while he streams, and she's part vet. But they take them out and they have playtime, and you get to watch them all play, and it's one of those kind of, well, that can't be that interesting. Yeah, and then you find yourself staring for 2 hours going, oh, as they do silly things. But they've got one ferret called Henry, and Henry is a special little man. Henry was born with most of his brain missing. Something like 60% of his brain is missing. They had to do lots of research, and they did lots of work on it. And Henry was born with 60% of his brain missing. And normally they don't live, but somehow Henry did, and with the remaining brain cells that he's got, he has many struggles, in that running in circles is a big thing for Henry. He really enjoys that, but they have these cameras, and they show him, and he is still learning from other ferrets. He is learning to be more normal. He is learning to do the things that other ferrets are expecting of him. And as a result of that, he is being more accepted by the other ferrets because he doesn't do really weird stuff. And it makes you realise that we as humans suffer exactly the same. We have human beings who, through unfortunate circumstances, are not as quite as society expected them to be. And as a result of being not quite what society expected them to be, they can find themselves somewhat treated differently, ignored, not, felt lesser of. Now, but they aren't necessarily lesser, they're just different. And so it's interesting to see this in an animal environment where animals are a little bit more blunt. In an animal world, if you are ill, you will be kind of like, well, you're going to be the one at the back of the pack, so that if they eat anybody, it's you. Tough to, sorry Bert, it's not your day. You can stay at the back. If you get eaten, never mind, it's for the good of the rest of us. So from that point of view, it's quite a cold environment. It's quite logical, but it's quite a cold environment. But watching the animals sit there and take on and include an animal who's clearly struggling to an extent, to include the animal and help him be more normal, which is something we don't really do as humans. We tend to kind of go, well, these days, back when I was a kid, they almost try to teach you to be normal. They would kind of go, well, nobody else does that. That's not right now, is it? Whereas today it's I've got this, so you'll have to accept that I don't do things you do. Now, I'm not saying either is right or wrong. In fact, very much the opposite. But at the same time, there is this, if you are different, and you are an expelled pair. Now, this is where I look and wonder if I got something wrong. So let me quickly look at how this ties together. You need to work backwards. And we'll pick one up when we come back, I think. Just trying to make sure I haven't done anything I shouldn't. This looks a little overly twisted. No, they're twisted the other way around. Right, so that's the twist that they should have. But having... Why is that an odd number of bobbins? Why are you only one? There can be only one. That must mean you need to be. Yes, you're part of that pair. So 1, 2, 3. See, that's not quite enough. But I think it is for the corner. I think it is for the corner. Anyway, let's go back through my... back through this. So yes, it's interesting to see how an animal pack. Bear in mind, they are forced together in the sense of he rescues some, and they don't get any say whether they can join or not. It's kind of like, hello, I present you with some more ferrets, enjoy. And so that the ferret rescue ferret group is. That's a disadvantage from that point of view, because obviously they don't get to decide which of the ferrets become part of their group or not, whereas obviously in the animal world there would be a level of that. But it's very interesting to see them accept Henry and how he is adapting to normal ferret behaviour, and he's learnt to groom other ferrets. He still does some wonky things, like he can only have a poo if he runs around in circles, but there are stranger things. If that's the only... And it seems to be his only mate. He's a bit wobbly, but if that's his only real leftover issue, he's come a long way, bless his little furry face. So, and they are quite cute, so I never really realised how cute ferrets were. When I was younger, I had a boss. His name was Brian. I occasionally wonder what happened to Brian. Like you do with some people you worked with. Others, not so much. But Brian had a thing, and he mentioned ferrets a lot. That's the ferret. I recently more worked with a bloke who called everything badgers, so it was kind of it kind of helps remind you of this. But Brian used to talk about ferrets a lot, and I always wondered whether he'd even seen one, because it's not. They are in the UK. There apparently. There are. It's not otters, because obviously otters are water-based, but we do have a similar animal to a ferret, stoat, that's the word, that's the one I was thinking of, and we have stoats, but stoats I don't think are the same thing, and so it is a little bit weird, and I'm trying to work out why that looks a little weird. That does look a little weird. Why is that looking so weird? And of course I can't see it. I'm going to have to resort to the camera trick again, because I can't lean in close enough to. we go. Quick look at that. That does seem weird. But I don't think it's wrong either. Oh well, let's leave it as it is. I will have to think about that one later. Put the phone in my pocket. There we go. So yes, there are a lot, but it's interesting to see the animal kingdom reacting to someone who is different to them. They do it far better than we do as humans. Why am I reverting back to the normal way? It's because I'm counting. Okay. You need to come out of that. I'm going to start stealing pins and stop nicking them out of the pot. The only important pins to leave are the ones down the edge, which is why I was making sure I'd pushed all the ones down the edge down, because that holds the piece in place. Why did I put that there? Idiot. It needs to go over here. Silly cow. That's far better. The problem with something like this is because we've changed direction, and at the corner you have to discard a pair. With the very internal one you don't discard a pair, but it means that it looks like there's a hole because you've got the dent of the turny roundy point. I think you're out now, so yeah, it does seem wrong only having 3, because I'm pretty sure we had 5 originally. And I know I had this problem before, is that sometimes you just have to believe. Because there's 4 pairs here, but obviously if you're adding a pair, stroke discarding a pair, there is the... If you had, so for example, you could count this pair because we haven't actually got rid of it yet, in which case there's 5 pairs in the work. But if you take this one out, there's only like 3 in the middle. But if you were in the way over to add one, and you haven't discarded one, in some directions there just seems to be more, and in some directions it's because of the directionality of what you're doing. And the turning the corner is the bit that screws it up in your head, because obviously if, for example, you had 5 going from right to left, and you were adding a 6th one and then dropping the original first one off, so maintaining 5, here, because you're coming the other way and you've turned the corner, you're dropping a pair off on the left, but on the journey over it now looks like you've only got 3 in the middle, not 4, and it just feels less, and it's not less. And like a lot of these things, sometimes you just have to believe, blindly do and believe, and not worry about it, because, well, just not worry about it, frankly. Because there's enough things to be going wrong without adding your own, without your brain messing up. And as you saw me doing the tallies, my brain can kind of go, I get it. Actually, I don't. So, especially with something like this, I just trying to tell my brain, it's okay, brain, it's not supposed to make sense. There are supposed to be different numbers. Because if you think at the corner, you gained 1 and immediately lost 1 at the corner. So you have but you never pick one up on the inside because you haven't moved, kind of thing. So it just feels weird, I think. And these spangles, this spangle, I mean, what in the name of mercy do you need a spangle that's as wide as 2 fingers for? It just makes it get in the way, and it makes it very hard to see. It makes it very hard to see and work with because it's just so big. 1, 2, 3. I don't know what I forgot to do. Cross you. So yes, it is complicated. There we go. Put that in there, give it a tug. See, what's happening is all of these bobbins are hanging out on the left hand side and not filling up the path, so it makes it look a little wonky. Oh, did I touch something with my elbow? I'm so sorry, dog, that you now need to spring into action. Never mind. The joy of dog. Let's make these a little bit longer. Thank you, Rory. What? Seriously, there is enough room for you to not bang into the table every time you two want to get on the couch. There really is. It's not like it hasn't been there for the last year or two. So I apologise again for the banging of dog. And if the lighting just changed on the pillow a little bit weird, that's because the sun's now gone in behind a really big grey cloud. So that's now a thing. I've got a feeling you need to come out there. So that's seriously, could you not, dog? Really? So one of the other problems, as I said before, I think, is when you're doing this, the pins actually obscure a lot of what you see as a lace maker, because obviously you have to look through the forest pins. Now, while these pins are fairly hair thin, there's still plenty of them, so there's this big grey mist over what you do with light catching pins. So as you undo the pins, you start to actually see what you did. And again, of course, this is a great way to see your mistakes. But of course, by the time you've got that far, you don't really fancy going back to fix it. So yes. See, I just feel like you should be a little bit further over. But it's not. I really can't see that. Yes, the journey from right to left was fairly solid looking. The journey from left to right, you get quite more accentuated bubbles where the work joins, and the bobbins have this want to hang out on this side, and I can't help but feel that this doesn't feel entirely good. Because you need to come out, but then that leaves me with only... Oh, I suppose by the time I've added these two, it does give me my 3, but that's only 3, not 4, you see, and so it worries me that I have mistaken, but I will never know, I guess. Well, I will know when I finally get to the bottom here and I run out of bobbins. Because there should be 4, looking at the picture, because you need 2 to make that, which makes 3. We'll find out when we get there. It usually works out in the end, but it's like the tallies. It's the more I think about it, the less it seems to work. So, Why can't I literally, it's like I cannot see it. I know there is a hole. I really do know there is a hole, because there is. But you see, there's this pair, which is the pair I've just joined, but the other pair do not hang down near it. Even though they come from the pin above, it doesn't seem to hang right. And there's not a lot I can do about that. Hold on. How are we doing? I'm not the fastest lace bobbin person, mainly because you just constantly seem to have to stop and grab pins. If you do a piece where you've got, if you make, like, if I was filling this diamond with instead of having this as cloth stitch on the outside, if I'd done something else and was having a hot cloth stitch in the middle, you'd see I can whiz through that pretty quick. It is the problem of, okay, I've just been told by my neighbour there may be a parcel being dropped off and they may come to me. We shall see. My neighbours are the greatest neighbours in the world. You could only dream of having neighbours like mine, I swear. When I got rushed to hospital, they looked after my dogs without a second thought. She saw the ambulance, because I had to be taken away by ambulance. She saw the ambulance, she checked up on me, and when I said, yeah, I'm going to be here for a bit, she came and got my key, because she couldn't find the one I'd given her, which is fine. She came and got my key, and for 4 days, they came in almost every 90 minutes to 2 hours and spent ages playing with the dogs in the garden, you know, obviously taking them out and watering them and feeding them and all the good things that you need to do, but they spent so much time with them and, you know, sent me photos, sent me videos, and it was just so nice because obviously being single, it's not like I live with someone who would naturally assume the duties. It was, you know, I need to point out, my local friends didn't offer to do it. People in my life who were, oh, well, if you needed anything, why didn't you call me? I did call you. I called 2 of you, and you didn't answer. Because I wanted you to take me to hospital, because I was in agony. And both of you didn't answer the phone. Even though I have done exactly the same for you. So, I did feel slightly put out, obviously, because, you know, and then you get the, oh, well, you could have rung. I did. Oh, I was asleep. Yeah, well, every time you called, I was frigging asleep too, but I woke up and answered the phone. There's the difference. And so, you know, I don't actually hold it against them, but at the same time, it was so nice that my neighbours went out of their way. They noticed, because the ambulance came at like 6 o'clock in the morning, but they noticed the ambulance had come, and it was here a little while, so maybe they woke up and were wondering why there's an ambulance outside my house, because after all, it's not like I'm old. It's not a common occasion. And it was beautiful because I didn't have to worry. I really didn't. And so I love my neighbours. I would do anything for my neighbours. I really would. Because, well, frankly, they were there for me when I needed them. And I didn't even have to ask them. They just naturally assumed that it would be helpful and did it. And did. So, yes, I was very, very grateful. And I love them dearly. So yes. So how are we all doing? Yeah, the weekend is slowly ticking by. You ever notice that weekends fly by? It's you have lots. You start the weekend with, this weekend I really need to do this, and this. And here we are in the UK. It's 1 o'clock on a Saturday. A quarter of your weekend has basically already passed. And chances are you haven't really done anything yet. You may have put the washing on, or you may have, done a bit of shopping or something. But the truth of it is you haven't really done much with your weekend. But already, a chunk of it has passed. So, I don't know. It just always seems that because time is so limited at the weekend, it always seems to pass that much quicker. And of course, many people do this, which is by Sunday evening, even though you've got the evening to go, it's I've got work tomorrow, and then you stop doing things because you've got work tomorrow, and so you don't really do anything with Sunday evening because you've got work tomorrow, and it just kind of detracts it all, and you're sitting there going, well, so kind of a quarter of my day I wrote off on Sunday. I often lie in on a Saturday, so maybe like me, you've already chewed maybe a quarter of Saturday by not getting out of bed early enough, and there's half a day gone, and you only had 2. It's there are countries who have done like a 4-day working week and reckon they get far more out of their employees for it, and I can truly see it because you almost, depending on who you are and how you are and your level of fitness and your ability to concentrate and motivate, maybe you are more capable of organising yourself and doing things, and you do lots of exciting things at the weekend and still get all your chores done, and you're a perfect, beautiful, wonderful example to the world. But for many of us, I don't think we do that, and it means that you find yourself kind of going, well, it may be the weekend and I may have 2 days to do things, but I almost need a day to wind down from my week. And so then that only leaves Sunday, and it's only a day, and you can't really do a lot with a day, so you don't. And so each weekend you come back from work, you sit down, you kind of decompress for a day, you then worry for a day and go back to work. So you've done nothing, then of course you spend all week worrying that you did nothing, and that you've got even more to do this week, and it just kind of snowballs. And I know I don't suffer entirely from that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to pretend that I'm organised, but I do have the advantage that where I work, we do not do Friday afternoons. We've already done our hours by this point, so we have that advantage of being able to do a few things Friday afternoon instead of having to wait till Saturday. So Friday afternoon, as you know, I stream, and it means that I can do that because I've done my work for the week. But it is very common in our place for this to be the afternoon of napping, because, well, it helps start your weekend off, because then maybe you feel good enough that you can do something Friday night, and so you then kind of, on Saturday you wake up a little bit more ready to do things, and it makes a lot of difference having that extra half day, because if nothing else, you can go and do some shopping when most people are still at work. Now, don't get me wrong, a good friend recently pondered the thought, why is it that when you're old and retired, you have an entire week to do anything you like, frankly. I mean, obviously you've still got to do your chores and keep your house clean and do the washing, but you can choose any time, any when to do it. So why do you have to go shopping on a Saturday when workers can't go Monday to Friday? Why is it you can't organise yourselves to go during the week? Now, of course, the older generation as a whole... Oops, that doesn't look like a plan. You needed to come out. Take them out. Doesn't matter, because I'll just tug those when we get there. The older generation were more used to buying fresh every day. We, the slightly younger generations, myself included, even though I'm 50, did a bit more of the weekly shop rather than daily go and get vegetables and fresh meat. And so I do understand that obviously some of the older generation are still in the, but I've got to go and buy fresh bread today, I've got to go and buy fresh meat today, I've got to buy my fresh vegetables. So they're only buying food of the day. But food of the day people make for really long till queues, because obviously everyone's buying, like 5 things. Whereas weekly shop people, sure, we come along with our shopping trolley, kind of slightly groaning at the edges, but we're only there once. And yes, it takes longer for us to go through the till, but we're only there once. The other people are there every day, forming a massive queue. So, it is. I guess it's a balance, really, isn't it? See, my thing's saying that 73% of my frames are either dropped or 73% of my frames making it. It's kind of hard to tell, and I can't really lessen them anymore. And 5k a second is not astronomical speed. I do not understand why it's struggling so much. Because I know that this must mean that you guys get a worse level experience. But I don't see why it is dropping frames. 5k a second is well within its ability to upload. CPU's bored. I just don't understand. I really don't. I'm confused, people. Because I really don't know what else I can do. The only other thing I could do would be to try to stream at a lower resolution, but with stupid fine threads, I mean, they're hard enough to see now. If I drop the resolution, I can't help but feel that you'll see even less of it. I really do. I really don't know what to say. I don't know quite how to deal with it. Yeah, I don't know quite what to do about that. Why is it that, even though I know I made holes for these things, I can't find them? There we go. Nearly to the bottom. Then we get to do the easy bit. This is, mind you, a lot of these things, you do a section and you're convinced you did it right because, you know, you were trying really hard, and it's only when you get to the next bit that you discover you were wrong. I mean, the only good thing I will say on this is that, very clearly, I have one more pin to the corner, and I can see I got one more pair of bobbins, so if nothing else, I've been adding them in at the right point, and I don't have a lot of bobbins on my pile, so you went under, so you've got to go over this time. That's too many, I think. Maybe not. Yeah, you're the pair that went out last time, so this is now for the corner. I'm going to steal that pin there. And we will do the return journey. See, here we don't discard this pair because we will need them next time round, which kind of, I think, which is why you end up with more when going one direction than the other, because, well, you just do. Right. Bin. And that goes in there. Now, previously, when I did this, I had, where these don't meet, they met before, and I found that very awkward because you had to try and kind of loop the two workers together. So, having them apart this time should be easier, but it might make it look like there's a big hole, which I am slightly concerned could be the case. So, now we need to... Oh, there's a pin there that I could still pull you up. Now we need to get all the way back to the beginning. So let's try and tidily, actually, put that down. Steal these over here a bit because these were those. Lift this up a bit. Add more to this collection, because I won't be needing some of those for a while, like that pile. So put those there, put cloth over the top. Now I can put these over the top of that. And pull more of these round. Yes, these spangles. I mean, they are beautifully staying where we put them, which is a great and glorious thing. But it's also, I need to get rid of spangles. I almost would rather spend time untwisting them. I was thinking this morning about which bobbins would be better. Which bobbins would I prefer to use? And maybe next stream I will bring you my bobbins. I will grab one of everything and we can discuss which bobbins would be good for this. And this is turning into a knot and a half. There we go. And that's an odd number of bobbins, so we need one of you. Right, so where we're at, we have these two. So that gives us 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Just counting I had the right number of bobbins at this point, because, you know, that's going to be a problem if it's not. I'm going to steal that pin, because it's sticking out. What I haven't been able to do, and I will get my camera and take a photo, is check that I have pushed all the pins down back there, and I am only stealing pins for which I should be stealing pins from. I mean, obviously if I take them from the middle or whatever, I can be sure that those are good pins to steal. I want to make sure that I am not stealing from pins that I really want to not be stealing from. So let me take yet another picture. I want to do it a bit more from this angle if I can. Problem is my phone gets in the way of the light. There we go. Let's have a quick look. Oh, there's a couple more back here. There's 1, 2. There we go. I can still you 2. But yeah, that's looking alright. So, there we go. Because I can't get my head in real close, taking a photo of it means that I can, because my phone camera is quite a high resolution camera, it does give me that opportunity to, actually that's a potential answer, but then that, anyway, I was thinking about whether it's possible to use my iPhone as my streaming camera, because obviously it's quite high resolution, but then what's the point? I'm struggling to send you the bitrate that I've already got, so let's not bring that into the mix. So now we need another pair of bobbins, and we have some bins that are easy to grab. A lady called Kelly, who does some beautiful weaving courses and is quite easy to find on the internet, Kelly Casanova, she recently brought up something that was very dear to my heart, which was the snobbery of crafting. Nearly every crafting out there has a level of snobbery. People would say, oh, you've got to be using silk, or you've got to be using these bobbins, or your bobbins can't be plastic, or you can't use those pins. And, you know, as a lace maker, those are the kind of snobbery commands that we get in our world. And I just realised I didn't twist that. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to fix that. That's a fixable thing. So I'll undo that. But yes, there is very much a level of snobbery in crafting, and it's unnecessary. Not everyone has Elon Musk's bank account to hand. I mean, let's truly be honest. And sometimes it is necessity that means that you are not using, you know, what is deemed to be the ideal tool stroke, thread stroke, yarn stroke, whatever your crafting thing requires, right? And people need to be mindful of that. In a world where 2 years ago, my electricity and gas bill was £40 a month. It's now £140 a month, and, well, it's only just kept my head above water during the summer months, where obviously heating is not so much the used thing. So, we need to be mindful that the money that we earn, that went up, 1% or whatever, is not going as far as it was, even 2 years ago. Now, you don't expect it to cover everything that it did 2 years ago, but at the same time, it's nowhere close. The insurance has gone up horrendously here. My house insurance for this house last year was, I think it was £600. This year, they wanted over £1,000. Now, the house hasn't changed. I've not claimed on it. Nothing's changed, it's just, okay, everything's a year older, but houses and properties aren't judged by their age until they get to be, proper vintage
historical listed kind of buildings.
For which this is unlikely to ever make that, so that's fine, because it's a fairly modern build. I'm not likely to suffer that. So you sit there going, well, my car insurance probably will go up a bit, but maybe not a lot. But we in the UK have a thing called a tax disc, which is your licence to use the road that the government demands of you every year. Last year my tax disc was £20 because I have a diesel car. It's not a big engine. It's a fairly old car. So my tax disc was £20. This year they're talking of it being £240. I don't do 240 miles a year. And suddenly having a car with £300 insurance and potentially £240 for the tax disc, and I'll have to service it, and that's nearly £300. And you're sitting there going, suddenly it's £1,000 for having a car that you may not use much. And then, of course, because you're going to put fuel in it, a pound something a litre, and it takes about 50 of those, and suddenly you're kind of going, can I afford to keep my car? I mean, I probably can, but is it really a good value of my £1,000 to keep my car, or would it make far more sense for the 3 days a year or whatever that I really actually want it, to hire one, or to get a taxi? Because that gives you 10 travels. Now, I'm sure I do 10 travels a year. I'm sure I do more than that. But not a lot. It is a close call. And so you do find yourself going, but a year ago, when it was 20 quid for my tax disc, I didn't think twice about keeping my car because, it's 20 quid. Yes, I've got to pay £300 insurance, but that's £1 a day. That's not so big. Okay, £2 a day when you add the service charge on top. But a couple of quid a day to have on standby, the ability to go anywhere. Okay. But the moment it's £3 a day, £3 a day is £90 a month. It's I could do more with that, mate. And I'm not ridiculously poor. I'm not well off either. I'm somewhere in the middle. But it is that you're having to start asking the questions of, do I pay for X or do I pay for Y? And so when it comes to crafting, which of course for many of us is optional, it is a hobby that you are choosing to do. It's not like you are making things because you have no choice, which of course is where many of them stem from, although lace making I think kind of was always optional a bit more, I think. But it's, you're not doing it because you need the shoes. You're not doing it to make your clothes so that you can not be naked when you go out. You are doing it by choice. Because it's inevitably, with nearly all crafting these days, it is not cheaper to craft it. I know I covered the whole knitting thing, I think in the first stream we did. It is difficult, but, even when it comes down to it, let's pick this square. Let's say I made the whole square. Well, to make this whole square, I have a lace pillow. Well, the lace pillow is somewhere in the region of £40 to £50. Ish. Right? Packet of pins, well, that's £4 or £5. The bobbins, oh bless the bobbins, but an average bobbin price is nearly £2 a bobbin. Well, this is going to be the best part of 100 bobbins. Well, that's 200 quid on bobbins. Now, maybe I didn't pay 200 quid for these bobbins, just as well, because I really resent that. But it is not an unrealistic price. Some of them are 10, 12. I have seen a single bobbin, such as, the likes of this one with words and things on it, for £10, £11 for a single bobbin. Unless it's been blessed by the Pope or something, I'm not paying that for a bobbin. It doesn't need to be pretty, it just needs to hold the yarn. And don't get me wrong, it's part of the reason I quite like these bobbins is, some of them are quite pretty, but at the same time, the plainer ones are just as good. They do just as good a job. And to be honest, with these painted ones, I'm more worried that the paint will come off and then it will look crappy and I'll spoil it. So plain ones are good by me, and hence most of the other bobbins that I've got are, none of them are painted, and I mean that genuinely. None are painted, none of them really even have fanciness. So, like, these have little lines, and these have dents, and not, this one's kind of been made into little bubbles at the end. Some of them come with wire entwined in them. Yeah, I haven't got any of those, but, that kind of thing. They can look beautiful. Imagine this with gold wire inlaid on it. Some people do literally inlays of mother of pearl, and beautiful. I'm twisting bits of thread with them. I don't need it to cost £60 for a bobbin. I just want it to hold the thread. And a very wise lady on the whole of YouTube, she talks about making lace making equipment, not on a budget, but for affordable cost as a beginner. Because you do not need to use, fancy lace making pillow. You do not need to have fancy bobbins. My favourite pillow, as I've said to you quite a few times, is the lid of a cooler. The only reason I'm not using it for this, I'm not actually sure now, because this pillow was designed for making squares. This centrepiece lifts out. In fact, if I move this bobbin and this bobbin, you can't really see the bottom one, but actually I'll have to, but the bottom one here lifts out. And so you can move the pattern closer, push it further away. You can also lift it up and turn it. And it is quite useful. Well, actually, it's just turn the pillow. But I'm now wondering why I didn't use my normal pillow. And part of the answer to that is because with this I can turn the square and keep the pillow the same way, whereas my other one, it's rectangular rather than square, whereas this is pretty square. So if I turned it, it's far more awkward. It'll be quite thin, one direction, and fat the other. So, it is something to consider. So, a square pillow is the answer. A round one is also a good answer, and I considered using my round one, because I've got a round one. But the round ones, you are always at the furthest point from where you're working, is kind of how it turns out, right? And as a result of that, I'm struggling to see my stupid fine threads here. Imagine what it'd be like if the pillow was like this. This would be nearer the top, so it would be further away from me. Of course I can move this up, but I don't need to because it can be in the middle. And if I was nearer the bottom, I can move it up so that there's much more room for my bobbins, and I will do. But we're not there yet. So it is the right cushion for the job. But a round one, if you've got a small round one, well then your bobbins are just going to be dangling off the bottom of it. If you have a big one, you can't see what you're doing. A bolster pillow would be great. And in terms of making the neck curtain in one piece would have been the absolute perfect example. Because instead of making a square, you could just make the whole thing in one piece if it was wide enough. And I am on the lookout for a bolster pillow of that variety. Now someone said, oh, but you can make one. Well, technically, yes, technically I could make one. But do I trust myself to make a sufficiently good one that won't, say, spring a leak while I'm working and, spill its guts all over the floor, or I discover that, well, actually I didn't, compress it hard enough, and so there's a saggy bit, and it spoils my work because it can't hold the pins properly. So there is, a big bolster pillow that was, kind of really wide, greater than the width of the work that I wanted to do, would have been an ideal situation, although God help me with the number of bobbins. The number of bobbins required to do that would just be enough to make me cry. But at the same time, like you're seeing with this, I'm currently working on this section here, while this section is done. Now, what I could have done is continued down adding the bottoms off the bottom, if this was the end of the work, and tied it off. Those bobbins then vamoose, rather than stay, because of course I wouldn't be making squares. So I could work in a diagonal, and the ones that were ending up on the right-hand side and done, for example, if I was working in a slant that way, because of course, you remember, when I started, the slant was the other way, and of course I am now working in a slant the other way, just to be annoying. But I can do either way, I really can. But, again, maybe these bobbins would no longer have purpose, well then you tie them off, chuck them out, two less bobbins to be worried about. So, depending on how it would work. Now, I have ordered a pattern, it hasn't arrived yet, and I'm getting a bit suspicious, but there's a couple of things I'm waiting on that haven't arrived yet, and I'm getting a little suspicious that they may not arrive, as you do with these things, because, I actually ordered some of my favourite bobbins. You may have seen that I posted on Instagram threads that I posted a picture of some bobbins and, entitled My Precious. I have about 200 of these bobbins now. I'm still on the lookout for more because, well, I love these bobbins, and obviously I have a fascination making big things, and so if I can get me the huge bolster pillow, these bobbins are the answer, and I spotted a straight in I can steal. It would be really useful to have a truckload of my favourite bobbins, because obviously they're my favourite bobbins, but they're big and chunky, and so I didn't want them for this because, well, one bobbin would take up like 3 bobbin space of these, and already these bobbins are filling the pillow a lot. So having big chunky bobbins isn't always a good plan. But in terms of the bolster pillow, for some reason, and again, slightly defies logic, when you have a bolster pillow, let's say you're working, round the bolster pillow, because obviously it's round, when you're done with them, you chuck them over the back. Literally, chuck them over the back. And they don't seem to tangle. And it's like a miracle, because they don't tangle. If you worky, chuck, grab, worky, chuck, grab, worky, chuck, grab, you then want to go back the other way, you go, hey, and it will be the 2 bobbins you want. It won't be 2 random bobbins that just were in the mood. It will actually be the 2 bobbins that you wanted. And it kind of, for someone who's worked on a flat pillow, it kind of defies all this logic, because even on it's the only problem with really thin pins, they're really, really sharp and stick you in the finger. Is there any blood with that? Yep, blood. Never mind. I'm not a vampire, I don't need to eat it, but, kind of the childhood instinct is to, suck it and leave it at that. I do have some Bonjela, I could treat it. It's only a pinhole, and I know where these pins have been, so I'm not too worried. It's not like they're old and rusty or anything exciting, so they're fairly fresh out of a new tub of pins, so I'm going to assume they're clean enough for... I'm not going to die of tetanus or something. Whereas if it was full of rust and there was someone else's pins originally or something, then yeah, maybe, because, I don't know where they've been, but... How is this stuck? How are you stuck? There we go. So, done you. Next. So yes, we're carefully working down our... Right about now. The Funk Soul Brothers, sorry. I would normally be watching a friend of mine who's working on a Beetle. His name's Oxford. He's also streaming right now. He's renovating a 1972 Beetle, so podcast as old as I'm. And he's no expert at it, but he's having a whale of a time, and he's learning lots of new things, and it is quite fun to watch. I mean, I've never renovated a car either, but I've had older cars. Obviously, I'm an old person because I've had older cars. I've had cars older than me. But it is fun to watch, and as a person, there is something about crafting, creating, even renovating, I would imagine, is taking something that wasn't and making it something that is, and it is quite good for the soul. It's also apparently good for mental health. And so he's doing that, and he's had to buy and spend, and again, expensive crafts, and he's had to buy things and look for new bits and replacement things, and he's still kind of at the strip. Well, he's stripped it all down now. I think he's finally finished stripping it and getting all the bits off it, and he's taken a lot of the paint off it and all that kind of jazz. So, but he's been very busy doing that, and he's currently streaming that, and I'd be watching and having a laugh. He also has good music on his streams because he doesn't keep them, so he's not worried about copyright things on YouTube and all of those kind of funkiness. Which, of course, I'm putting these up on YouTube, so I have to be aware that YouTube, if you play more than like 15 seconds of some copyright stuff, it will delete the audio on your video and give you a copyright strike and kind of tell you how dare you. And yeah, I can't be doing that, so don't need that. Especially as my streams. I mean, to be honest, I'm sure you don't need any wittering, but I try to keep wittering because I'm not sure you want a stream where I say nothing, but maybe you do. Who am I to know? These a little longer. A bit close. A lot of people don't work with bobbins close up to their pins, and I'm not saying it's a bad or a good thing. A lot of people, their bobbins would almost be off screen, so if my hands are here, I'm talking a good 8 inches below that. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, because I actually think it's probably quite a right thing. But as long as there's enough room for bobbins to wiggle, I don't mind them being a bit shorter so they're on camera. And obviously there are times when you sit there going, no, actually I do need to let those down. Like now, these two feel a bit too much shorter than the rest. It's more about being shorter than the rest than actually being short per se. It's just, you want them to be mingling quite nicely with the other bobbins, and you don't want them to be too out of line, so that, like I said before, that you're trying to cross bobbin with thread or air, because they're out of range of the others. So getting a bit busy, as we can see. But you end up breaking them into these chunks, and so you can hive off, like I've done over here, an awful lot of the bobbins and cover them all over. And especially if you pin down this cloth, it does mean that you don't have to worry about them. But you can end up with, especially when you've got all the bobbins out, obviously we still have all of the bobbins to add to make that just part of it as well. A big piles of bobbins and a few cloths, because obviously these bobbins at this point, so where these two are closest, there's all the bobbins that make the groundwork there, there's the handful of bobbins that make the two solid sections, and then a bobbin there. So all of the bobbins kind of left of this mark here are irrelevant for working on the early part of this section. Well, so I can cover them up. But you don't really want to cover them up as one section, because, well, then it would be, width of the... you want to really work about here. So you make a couple of piles, and then you have cloths and more cloths and more cloths, and you need to pin them down so that they don't leak and escape into another layer. And which, again, is why the spaggles are quite good, because you can put them back on one of these and tie them out. I mean, I could have put the other ones on a pin instead of covered them with a cloth. But one of the advantages with the cloth is you can lift it up and steal too if you realise you miscounted. It really is not a lot of effort. Whereas obviously if you have, so you have mated, you are not bobbin I require. Okay. And so yes, it is a challenge to keep your bobbins in a controlled environment, as we call it, and not have mayhem. There's my little pusher. I'm gonna go down the outside edge a bit more, so you can actually see the tops of half these pins. I believe I went all the way down the edge. Not most of it down the edge. Feels like most of the edge. As you can see, when it lifts up, you actually get to see the lace quite nicely behind it. And it's at that point you start appreciating the work that you've done, which is good for the soul, because it feels like you're getting somewhere. And that because obviously when it's still from pins, it's very much, it's like scaffolding on a building, really, isn't it? It's hiding away and masking the work that you've done, and it's only when you take that scaffolding away that you truly get to appreciate, you know, all the work that's gone into improving it, cleaning it, whatever you're doing with scaffolding, you know, new roof or whatever. But it's only once it's complete and it's all, you know, released into the universe that you can truly appreciate the thing. And when I made that first square, obviously I was, you know, I posted lots of along the way photos, and it's the true visibility is when you finish the quarter and all you've got are the pins on the outside holding it to the piece of cut paper underneath, and you can finally see it in all its glory as a quarter. And it's then that you appreciate, you remember how much work you did with it, you can truly appreciate all that you've done. Whereas while you're sitting here and maybe getting a bit back at doing it, and you know, you've stabbed yourself 6 times with a pin, you've redone some sections because you screwed it up, you know, because we can still find I've screwed it up and have to undo some of this, so you know, that's definitely a thing. And you know, it's because, as I say, sometimes you only work out, you only realise when you get to a point and go, I've got too many bobbins, or I've not got enough bobbins, and you have to try and work out where you went wrong somewhere further back in the extra time. Like I did, you know, yesterday when I realised that I'd missed a pin. I'd missed discarding on a pin, and I had too many bobbins, and it was kind of like, how did I get to this point with this many bobbins and not now have some bobbins here? The answer is because I was stupid. And so yes, it is a thing, but these spangles really do need to go do one. I'm being less crappy about them today, doesn't mean I'm hating on them less today. Well, yesterday obviously the exploding bobbin was a little bit much. We're doing alright. We're doing alright. See, the next section we do once we get to the bottom of here is we can either do this section, or we can do this section underneath all the threads here, or this cloth stitch section just poking out underneath. Part of me is tempted to do a bit more of this side and keep the kind of general work in that direction. Why is that? Well, because then I won't have added, like, you know, more pairs of bobbins. Because of course I could work all the way down that side and add all my bobbins in, and then I've got to shuffle them around a load. So if I work that way, which I can do, which is quite logical in some ways, you know, get the worst of it over and then diminish towards this corner. In doing that, I've got all the bobbins on at an early stage in the way. Whereas if I work this way, I am gradually getting fatter, and it's only at this last row, really, well, obviously it wouldn't work out that way, but I have to add the last pair of bobbins. So, you know, I offset the additional bobbins until the last moment, rather than rushing to add them all, and then having to cater for their annoyances of existence earlier in the gameplay, shall we call it. So, and as I said earlier, you can remove pins as long as you've got, you know, a few layers of work behind it with pins in, so that when you put a little bit of tension on the bobbin to make lace, you know, lie the way it should, it's not really a problem. But at the same time, you find yourself kind of reluctant to pull some pins out, even though you know that it's safe to do so. So, for example, once I get to kind of this level of my pins, I don't necessarily want to pull these out yet, even though I can pull some of them out and it really isn't a problem. There is just this kind of built-in, it's called fear factor of, I don't want to be undoing that yet, because it feels, it's kind of like a new block of stuff to be getting our pin collection from. So I'll probably add a few more pins at that point from the pot. But it is actually a lot quicker when you're stealing ones off the board, because you know you can pick up just one, it's already in the right orientation, so you can just kind of go grab one, poke. And it does make the whole thing speed up, to be honest. So once you get to a point with, you know, you've got most of the pins you're going to ever need, because you're not adding new pins or you're not adding new bobbins and all that kind of stuff, you do find yourself, it does speed up, purely for that reason, is that the pins are kind of presented in a uniformly available position, and you can almost, without looking, go and get your next set of pins. This feels like, I was going to say it feels like I've run out of bobbins, but it's not, because I'm not in that one. So yes. As I said, yes, I do find it awkward in that I want to work on this, but at the same time, I don't necessarily always want to stream it, so I may do. But the problem is, even if I don't stream it, if I record it, even like I was saying earlier about the camera, by having the camera about, it restricts where I can work, and by restricting where I can work, that's the bit that makes working on it so much harder. So I'm not entirely sure, because obviously I do want to, I want to sometimes work on it more than I want to be talking to you lot, no offence. I want to just quietly do some work and sit and do some work, and I could not speak to you. I could just sit here and lace away, and then anyone dropping by would think, you know, God, what a boring stream. And, you know, how can I argue that it's not? Well, let's say, you know, I go off to get another cup of coke or something, because it's been a while and my voice, you know, I feel a bit parched. So they come back and there's no sound. I mean, at least that's part of the reason the music's there, I think, to kind of break it up a little bit. But I do feel slightly compelled to talk to you when I'm working, so that you have something that when you join, you can hear me, and, you know, if you watch this later on YouTube, that it's not just a bit of noise of bobbin. And I know that ASMR's a thing,
But I know I can't imagine watching 3 hours of people, plonking bobbins without a word. But although of course it would free me to swear a bit more and maybe listen to something, because I could listen to something on Amazon and you wouldn't be able to hear it because it wouldn't be attached to a speaker. So that might be a thing. I'm going to try not talking. Hi Dorian, how are you? Thank you for coming. How's moving? Really can't. Part of me doesn't understand why you come, Dorian. I mean, I know you've met me a bit through Ox's streams, but I can't imagine this is kind of necessarily up your boat, shall we call it? I don't see you grabbing some bobbins and making some lace doilies or something in a hurry. But it is good to have you nevertheless, my friend. And unlike certain people, I will not be insulting you too much on my stream. I don't have enough people to be insulting once I've got. Oh, there it is. I insult myself instead. See, this is where it gets awkward because I'm having to work at this angle, but I sit facing this way. So I'm going to lift some of these bobbins back on here for a minute, get them out of the way, make the working angle a little bit nicer. There we go. These spangles so need to go do one because they keep flipping underneath each other and making it awkward. With your YouTube, you may have noticed there's a hook on the end of this one. This is because you can do other things with it. The collection of bobbins I bought were a motley lot, and I love them for the fact that they are a motley lot, and it's not just 240 kind of brand new, shiny, absolutely identical pins. I do like the second-hand ones for that because, well, they got use, and I did buy some, and one of them was cracked in half and is frankly unusable. In fact, I have it here, I think. Is that it? Yeah, there it is. So there is a mega chunk of a bobbin. I mean, look at the size of this thing. But as you can notice, if I spin it, this part here is missing. If I spin it around, you'll see that instead of being a full circle, it's only half a circle. It's snapped off, and it doesn't make it unusable. To be fair, it really doesn't. But at the same time, it is a disabled bobbin. It's missing a chunk of itself. And the head of this thing, I mean, seriously, look at the size of the head of this thing. I mean, here's one of the... Actually, that's not a really good bobbin to show you. Here's another bobbin. So here's a spangled bobbin without anything on it. Look at the difference in the size of the top of these bobbins, right? Now, this is ideally for thick, chunky thread, as it came with some on, in fact. But even at that size, trying to hand manipulate, because these are great for hand manipulation. You hold the bottom and you just kind of wiggle around a bit. But having the size of the top to try and rotate a bobbin round what's got to be 1.5 inches almost of bobbin top. That's a lot. That's dexterity, that is. So yes. Now, if you look very carefully, that first ground triangle that we did is basically visible now. So if I zoom in, not that it's hugely zoomed in, I do understand. But by the way, I do have a better zoomy lens. But it doesn't have the ability to stay. So if I want to zoom out, so obviously it then retracts upwards, it just falls straight down. So, and there is a YouTube video on how to fix that. 96 billion little tiny screws and lots of wafer-thin connectors, and I'm not doing that to an expensive lens, so we won't be doing that. Be cheaper if I knew one, to be honest. But, as you can see, we have now revealed the very early one, and there is a slight mistake in it. I did notice when I took the photo, around about here, just there. I'm not quite sure what went wrong, but there is a mistake in it. Congratulations, Liz, well done. But we are very much in progress. Hang on, I need to move something. There we go. I need you to put your move because it was going to make a little noise when I moved it because I keep hitting it with my elbow. So this is what's nice is when I now look at this, I now see from the angle I'm sitting, even though I'm aware there is an error in it, I can't see it from where I'm sitting because of the error and the fact that it's all white I now begin to see the work taking shape, even though obviously we're an inch further on, but I can see that level of work behind, and I can see where we're at, and I can see how it's beginning to form. And as I said on day one, that when we started this, the difference of the dots and the size of the threads in the one that's the kind of holding screen for this string, the first square I made, which gave me the idea of doing this, the thread I used there was size 30 thread, and the holes had around 2.41 millimeters of gap between them. This is size 50 thread, so slightly smaller. Thread size is stupid. Remember, I've always mentioned how crafting has stupid names for things. When you're a knitter, you have lace weight, and then you have various things like double knitting, even though double knitting is also a technique. The Americans have sports, and then there's like chunky and extra chunky, right? So they use a kind of word level. Obviously, lace is fine, and the thicker it gets, the chunkier it gets. Weavers use a magic thing, and I have described it so many times it's almost ridiculous. In the beginning, there was the one. A weaver who took a given weight of yarn and sat down and spun the one. It was deemed to be the one. Because, you can take a kilo or a pound, whichever, decade you were in at the time, and spin it fat or thin. But this was deemed to be the one. This was forevermore heralded as the one. So when you see 8/4 cotton, that means it is 8 times longer, so it's thinner, but 8 times longer than the one for the given weight of yarn that if you took, let's say it's a kilo. If you took a kilo of yarn, the one is 1 long, right? The 8/4 cotton is 8 times longer than the one for the same amount of weight. The 4 tells you there are then 4 of those 8 times longers twisted together. So they use that as a description. Now, it's quite an accurate description, but obviously the one was just the one. Because I could make a really, I could take a kilo of yarn, twist it literally in my hands and call it the one. But that was not the one. Now, originally, obviously, it was in pounds and ounces, and then they changed to a new one where they use the same style numbers, but it's the new measurements. So it's a bit like, I know, it's the same as kilo and pounds. This is 1 unit. Okay, what's the unit? Oh, well, this is the old unit. Okay, so that's pound. Oh, this is the new unit. Okay, so that's kilo. They're not comparable, but written down, they'll just write 8/4, and you are none the wiser. You have to look for NE after it, just to know that it's the new measurement. The same yarns that weavers use are often used by crochet people. Now, crochet people picked a 1 and gave it a number, and then went, well, if it's fatter, we'll go up the number. If it's thinner, we'll go up the number. So 80 is thinner than 10 by quite a lot, but not by a universal. It's not like, 20 is twice as thin as 10. No. Is it, say, 0.1 thinner? No, it's not that logical. It is just the next number up. And so you do get, 5, and when they get really fat, they do kind of go into individual digits, but as a whole, it's 5, it's 10, 20, 30, 40. So when it comes to lace making, they do both. They use kind of the weaver's style. So, for example, I bought this gown. So here is a gown of white thread. This is 40/20 gown of cotton. So that's a weaving turn, that's fine, that tells you the one. So it's 40 times longer, which obviously means it's quite thinner. And there's 2 of them stuck together in a twist to form the thread. Great. I think it's actually 43, but I said it was 42. I've got a feeling it's 43, I haven't counted them. My life is not that short yet and I haven't owned it. But the thread I'm using here is numbered, but it's not crochet thread numbers. No. This is lace thread numbers, and the numbers are not universally equal. It's a bit like women's clothing. If you go into a store and buy, a size 16 pair of jeans, and you went to the next store and bought a size 16 pair of jeans, they would not be the same size. Sometimes by, not say an inch or so, I'm talking 6 to 8 inches or so, which is why women hate clothes shopping. You have to try on everything, because no matter what size it says it is, you actually have to go and see, does this thing fit? Yes, no. Which makes women's clothes shopping absolutely horrendous, which is why all sane people should buy men's clothes where possible, because men do, my butt is this big, therefore I buy jeans that are marginally bigger than my butt wide. So much simpler, people. So much simple. So I sit before you in men's clothing because I'm wearing trousers. Because it means I can go, here's a tape measure. Ooh, I've got a large butt. Go to Amazon or whoever and go, I want large butt trousers. Oh, thank you. They arrive and they fit. So, and of course they measure their legs. So you can go, oh, well, I've got a fat butt and short legs. Or at least that's how it feels. Because of course I'm a woman and I'm 5'7" and I'm not a bloke who's 6 foot tall. And so you go, I want fat butt trousers with short legs, please. And okay, it limits some of the things that you can buy. But it will fit when you receive it. I have yet to find men's clothing that says I am X wide and X, and Y tall, and it's not be so. Whereas women's clothing, oh, well, in this I'm a this, and in that I'm something completely different. And then there's the small, medium, and large, and extra small and extra larges, and it's just too much, people. It is just too much. We do not need this in our lives. We really, really don't. So can we just dial back the complication of, I'm going for pin pot again, so, oh look, I really bent one. Don't need those. Don't need bent ones. So yes, clothes shopping is just a nightmare. So it's much easier to buy men's clothes. Seriously, it's liberating. If you're a woman and you want a pair of tracksuit bottoms, or you want a pair of, you want a jumper, or you want, just buy men's stuff. Just buy men's stuff, because it will go, this is so fat. or this is so thin, depending on how you look at it. You know, this is so many inches wide. Great. Measure. Am I smaller than the required thing? Yes. Then it will fit. If you want a fairly tight fit, you want to leave, 3 or 4 inches. If you want a really loose fit, you might want 7 or 8 inches given it. But you can tell in advance, is this going to be tight or not? Because you know, because it's a given size. It's just magical stuff. Magical stuff. Well, we're coming to the end of this. Pretty much a record time if you consider what I did yesterday. So, as I said, stealing pins from further up the work is generally faster than the bot. So it does make it a bit easier. Let's put you round the corner again, because you're beginning to get in the way. See, how are you wrapped around there? That should not be a thing. And you, come on, out there. Right. I swear it's possible with these really fine pins to grab just one. Picked up 3 then. Stab them down over here. Get a bit short, these ones. Let's make these a bit longer. It's amazing how the difference between short and okay is, sometimes as little as like a centimetre. It's surprising, but it really does make a difference. It really does. Part of the reason we do a pricking beforehand is the straighter and neater your holes, because obviously you're forming the lace around and keeping it in position with the pins. Now, technically you could do it without the pins, but it would look a lot wonkier, and I'm sure this is where the world started, is they started by not having pins, and then realised by stabbing them into place and keeping them still, they had a lot more control as to what it looked like at the end and how much more uniform this ground stitch would be, and it is a method of controlling the... It's a bit like blocking and knitting, I guess. Afterwards, only we block as we go, kind of thing. So, we are about a third of the way through now. Actually, in a more quantifiable position. Because if you look, if I take this off now, if you look, that's about halfway down. So chopping that in half will give us kind of ish 2/3 to go. So, we do the other half of our rows round. I think we will try and do this bit next. As I say, I could do this bit and start adding more bobbins, but rather not. And if you look at it from a more rulery kind of perspective, that additional line is further down. So if we continue a bit more with this side by doing at least this section, we are opening ourselves up to continue the work down in that kind of gradual direction that way. So I'm kind of done with most of you now, so let's see if I can't scoot you around that way a bit more. Because the more out the way you are, the better. Scoot, scoot, scoot. Trying to keep them around that pin. So what I can do now is, let's pull down these. Let's have a look.
I need to squint at this a bit more to see where we were at. You seem to be on your own, which is
A little bit weird.
so. You're a pair. You're on the edge, pair.
You're just a pair, it's just at one side of you.
So if you look, this one is very much attached to this pin here. But this one doesn't seem to be yet. That's the pair, and they're pulling apart, which is slightly irritating. In fact, something is wrong. There's something wrong, which is why. Because if you look, these are the workers, but this, it's like there's a twist somewhere. These two cross over.
So we're going to undo this.
So let's work this out.
So, over, under, over, under. No, that hasn't.
Undid that correctly. So let's go and right. You twisted. Right, twisted the other way then. You come round that way twice. Under that one, over that one. And you over that one, under that one, and you over that one. to the problem point, because you are resting, and you go on from there. So,
Now we've sorted our lives out a little bit. We're a bit short. Right, let's put you down at the back. Now you can't be too far at the front because, well, you cover up all the pins, but you can cover up most of the bobbins and stop being distracting. So, just need to make sure you guys can see enough of it. Let's pull that back a bit more. There. Slightly less distracting. So, over, under, over, under, over, under, over.
still doesn't look quite right. Because this one,
Doggy mare's going on in the corner. Amy! Let's undo this again. Amy! I'm not quite sure why
this is perpetually going wonky, which it seems to be. But the fact that we feel it's wonky means we need to address what is ever causing this potential wonkiness. And the answer is, you're crossed and shouldn't be, you're crossed and shouldn't be, you're crossed and shouldn't be, and you shouldn't be crossed either.
There, that looks tidy. Hey, pop, pop. I do have to be very careful with one of my dogs when they're having puppy mares, because obviously we don't know what they're doing back, so they can't exactly tell us, right? When they kind of go, "Hey, hey, hey," you always feel that this is not a good thing. Now, they could be barking, chasing a rabbit and happy as pig and poo, but you can't be sure. And occasionally my dogs do wake up, or one of them wakes up, swinging for a fight. And I mean swinging for a fight. I have the scars to prove it, I truly do. He's not a vicious dog. He just had, they both had a very bad start in life. And while I would love to think that they don't remember it, they clearly do. They were found when they were tiny, tiny puppies. They were almost days old when they were found. I think it was like, less than 2 weeks. They were literally, in the stage where you'd still count them in days. They had their eyes open, but that was it. They were found, and at the time they were found, they were no bigger than the length of your shoe. They were little. And they were then taken to a shelter. Now, not in this country, but they were taken to a shelter. Now, we all know that shelters do their best. And I am not going to say that this shelter was a bad shelter. But they obviously had quite a few puppies. Because I did get an early video of them playing with puppy friends. Because they were a litter, and I think there were 4 or 5 in the litter, and I am aware of their brothers and sisters, well, main sisters, but existence out in the world. And, I get regular updates, and it's funny how different they all look, but they're not different, if you know what I mean. But Rory definitely suffered something, either in the shelter or before. Because if he is half asleep, you cannot touch the back half of that dog without there being blood involved. Whether you're me or her or anything, frankly. So I have a few scars from either my good self in my sleep, or Amy, or possibly even his own tail, maybe. I have no idea, because sometimes all you wake up to is this death battle and you have no idea what started it. But I have seen it happen, is that he's been half asleep, and I've, flexed my foot in bed or something, and inadvertently touched him just because I'm, wiggling my foot a bit, and it set him off. And he goes to take out whatever did it. So he obviously has some quite deep-seated trauma, but at the same time, when he's awake and he's kind of, normal, he is the sweetest, gentlest thing. He would not deliberately hurt you unless you're trying to trim his claws. That's off limits. But he is generally a very placid, calm, gentle animal who, if I'm going to end up scratched or mauled, it's usually her. She is a face hugger. She'll be sitting there on the carpet looking at you. Next thing you know, she's wrapped around your head, and her face is literally pressed against yours. He doesn't do anything like that. He will sit gently and paw at you. Admittedly, he is Flojo with long nails because he won't let you trim them, and it can be slightly painful, but he is not deliberately hurtful. And in fact, it's really quite sad if he does. But as I say, I do have kind of the scars to prove it, so it is not an ideal situation, because, well, it's just really not. Because obviously I have a dog who, if in event of an issue, you have to be careful waking him up. Now, it's not that he hasn't got hearing or anything, so it's not that level of surprise. It's a case of he was fast asleep, because he sleeps like the dead, and in doing so, you have woken him from his slumber, and he is unaware of what has woken him up initially, but like we all can be. And, the man needs his coffee before he is approachable, is the short answer. And if you don't kind of come prepared, be aware. On your own head be it. So we've come to this understanding that, let sleeping Rory's lie as a whole, and you have to be very careful if you want to try and wake up, which is why I talk to them quite so much in that situation, is that if I start with the voice, even if they're not directly conscious of it, they are, and so if I wake them up, they know it's me. So, and it is generally quite successful. Just gonna work my way across. Because remember what I said about going the other way, where you had 3 workers, 3 passives, and 1 worker going the other way? Look at this corner now. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and going into the corner, I now need to pick up 1, so I will now have 5. And this is where you end up with, like I said, this is where you end up with the, brain farts, because going the other way, you didn't have anything, I only had this many bobbins, but now I've got 2 more pairs. Well, I don't, because these are technically already thrown out, but I gained a pair because I'm going the other direction. And so it's one of those brain farts you just have to kind of learn to live with the fact that it doesn't seem to add up, because you think you always have the same amount going either direction. And the answer is, you don't. You just don't. You just don't. Funnily enough, let me just finish this run. This bobbin here, which is distinctly much chunkier than its friends, is actually quite nice because it's got a really small spangle on the bottom, which stops it rolling, but it's barely wider than the bobbin, and the bobbin's a good chunky chunk. I don't think I've got any chunky ones. Other chunky ones, I think I've only got kind of that one. Might be another chunky one in the pile because I've got a big box of more bobbins. I have a lot of bobbins. I think I mentioned this yesterday. I've got about 1,000 bobbins. And I basically got a couple of hundred of the kinds of bobbins that I wanted. Now, there are other kinds. So, for example, if we go back to this, which is a super mega chunk of my favourite kind, they do ones with thinner star tops but really bulbous bottom ones. These are generally French. And it's kind of weird to me how the bobbins are different for, I won't say for different laces, but it is the different regions. And I assume some of it is just, it's a bit like the fact that the Americans don't put, all the vowels in their words, and in terms of aluminium, just got a whole chunk of it. But, it is that, how did we get to a point where, because I'm pretty sure that at no point in the world did everyone in the world go, we need to meet in Geneva, for example, because obviously, the Geneva Convention and everyone goes to Switzerland for that. But, we're all going to head to Geneva and we're going to discuss the fundamentals of lace. We are going to decide that cross means this, that cross is left to right, twist is right to left, and that bobbins should be approximately 4 inches long, and, we feel ours should have spangles. Oh, we don't want spangles on ours. There was no Geneva Convention over the forming of the lace, maybe. But at the same time, so many different kinds of lace that are out there but involve the same thing. Now, there are some where a pair of bobbins would be called a bobbin, and there are places where a bobbin is called pair. Don't quite work that one out. But the gist of it all is, it's unlike language where, for example, in English we say a rubber duck. In French, it's a duck of plastic. Or rubber, but they say plastic, so, good plastic. It is, we find ourselves, language is different, for example, in sign language, they often omit a lot of the, I won't say unnecessary words, but, if you're going to say, I am going to make a cup of tea, it would be almost, I make tea, or I make cup of tea. You don't need to add some of the frillier words to it, you just want to get the gist across. And so it's, while you can spell out every single word, in general, kind of, because they have a lot of gestures that mean a whole word rather than having to spell each word out individually, because that would just take a really long time. Let's not talk about anti-establishmentarianism a lot, or the other one, fucking hell, hypophilification, which I really can't say. The longest words in the English language, we do not need to be spelling the 20-something letters that go to form that, because just let's not, because by the time you get to the end of the word, you've forgotten what you were talking about. So, they do have words for, they do have gestures for a word. So, family, friend, large, small, these, instead of spelling them out, they have a gesture. But again, British Sign Language and American Sign Language, huge difference. American Sign Language is generally one-handed for the spelling, I get that. Haven't looked into it clearly, but to complicate, I know the alphabet in British Sign Language, but of course I can't spell, so that doesn't really help me very much. And they probably do it too fast for me anyway. I do know a few words, but only by chance. I am not a sign language person. I am interested in it, but I am not a sign language expert in any shape or form. So, I don't know, there is just, you're just going to cross on you now. You just already stuffed that up for me, well done. I can't see what I'm doing, because I can't. Right, sorry, when I did something it lifted too at the same time, because they're thin and lightweight and you don't notice. And they didn't twist over properly, so. But yeah, the formation of language and how it's varied around the world is interesting to me, because obviously, once again, not sat down at some form of Geneva Convention and said, we have decided that this is dog. We know that in a language this word represents dog, but it does not necessarily mean dog. It is the word for the shape of the animal that we think of a dog. It's like colours. Colours do not have names. Well, they don't, I christened the red. No, it was not a thing. No one sat down and did that. But what they did do was, in trying to describe it, I need to explain this word to another person, we will give it a name that in English we call it red. But one of the fascinating parts is your eyes made up of lots of different pieces. So the physical colour, my brain sees as red, your brain may see as blue. And they know this because when they've done eye transplants, people's brains freak out because, well, now they're getting different colours from one eyeball. I do have slightly different colours in each eyeball. One's reddier than the other, but red is still red. But it does mean that while we agree, I know this is green, the colour I'm seeing and the colour you're seeing are not necessarily the same. We just agree that we all call this green. And, and language is the same. We have basically done we all agree that a tree is a tree, right? And in my language, tree is tree, and in your language, tree is not tree, it's a different language. And so, it is fascinating to me is how... Did I miss adding some? I think I missed adding some. I think I should have added, I didn't. Go back. This is definitely the problem with my hideous eyesight, and this is not going to get better after all, because I'm not going to get younger, that's for sure. You need to come out momentarily. Yes, I cannot add this level, so I need to find your friend, and I've got a feeling that it's you two. Right, so I need to add you two now. Untwist you, perhaps. Yes, I knew something wonky. Right. Sometimes it's really easy not to make text.
something right here.
Sometimes really easy not to make mistakes. And you didn't notice the avatar before. The avatar came potentially for stream number 2. I made something so that you could see my mouth was moving even if sound or something went away. So, yes. Nice to see you, Tenchi. It's so good to see you. I missed you yesterday. Yes, the avatar was a added thing to, so that, for example, like now when I'm talking and you can't see my hands, that something is happening on stream while I talk. Now, I will say, I did put a fair bit of effort in that I do vaguely resemble the avatar, in that my hair is brown and long, I wear glasses, I am white, well, I won't sound dirty, but, you know, if you look at the colour of me, I'm clearly not brown, I'm certainly not a darker brown, I'm female, I'm wearing beige jumper, because I live in my beige jumpers, I mean, hello, beige jumper, so it is a representation, and it's alright, you miss me, and Tenchi, you know, you're not legally obligated to be here, you really are. I just like talking to you, because it's always nice to see you, and, you know, I was actually going to drop you a note later to check on you to see if you were okay, because, you know, you didn't come, and so, you know, I worry about you, my friend, I do, and it's always good to see you, so, as you're here, I was going to ask you, if you remember I said to you I was going to ask you a question and then I never did. Hello, welcome to being me, right? I am forever doing things like that. I was going to ask you if you wanted to be a moderator, because obviously last week, we had a number of bots come in the channel, and I don't know whether you guys saw it or not, but a number of bots came in the channel, and I had a job to ban them and report them. Now, admittedly, I have now found a way that I get to see the moderator tools in my streaming thing, so I can do that, but at the same time, I obviously then have to stop what I'm doing and doing it, and having a second pair of eyeballs could be a good thing. So, as my longest dedicated and loving friend, I was going to ask you if you would like to have this potential ability to assist me. I mean, you know, because I know obviously quite often on, say, on Friday, you're working, and, you know, you're not necessarily in any better position than I am to handle an idiot who's coming going, hey, you could buy viewers! And, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, having some viewers would be great, but at the same time, I'm not going to pay for them. If you don't want to watch it, you don't want to watch it, I'm not going to make it. So, it is that kind of, having a second pair of hands could be useful, just on the off chance, because, you know, the quicker we get rid of idiots, the better. It is a thing, but as I found the moderation tool, it is less pressing, shall we call it, but it still would be nice if you would like to assist in that manner. So yes, how's the stream looking, Tench? How's it looking? Is it doing okay? Because as I was saying right at the beginning, I have noticed that when I upload videos to YouTube, towards the end, they tend to start going a bit funny. Now, it shouldn't be from my end, because I've got a disc that's capable of something like 20 gig a second, so it shouldn't be that, and the whole stream's usually only 3 gigs, so it really shouldn't be tracking the speed. It's not doing particularly anything else, other than streaming. I've made care of that. It does seem to drop a few frames on its way to Twitch, so I wouldn't use what Twitch got, I use the local one here, because I do have the ability to export from Twitch to YouTube, and obviously that would then be an absolute record of what went out, rather than the absolute record of what I thought I did, because obviously when you're because it's recording while I do this, I upload the recording, and the recording is of what I thought I sent, and that doesn't feel right. That feels wrong. No, that's okay. So yes, I upload what I recorded, so what I tried to send, at least I think I do, but even when it gets to YouTube, yes, they stream for 3.5 hours, after about the 3-hour stage, it kind of, if I clicked through in points to skip forward, I got new pictures. If I did not do that, I did not see the frames. So it's there, but YouTube seems to have munged it a bit, and I'm not quite sure if there's anything I can do with that, because obviously that's annoying. But I have also enabled Twitch to keep the streams now, so you can view them on Twitch, and so can I, obviously, and then I can maybe go and look and see what you guys saw, rather than what I wanted, you know, what I thought you were going to get. So that's a thing. I've also, as I said earlier, I've restricted it to 30 frames a second to try and reduce the bitrate needed to be sent, because as I say, although 5k a second is really not a lot, and my link should be more than capable of supporting that, apparently it's struggling. I'm not quite sure why, but, you know, 5k a second really is not a lot. Sorry, 5k a second. Well, it depends. If it's bytes or bits, doesn't it? I've got a feeling it's bytes, in which case it's 5k a second, and really you should be capable of that. It's got, you know, megs of upload. Well, it's got gigs of upload, so it's got megs of upload, so it should be very capable of uploading that, but it does seem to be slightly struggling. One thing I will say with YouTube is that the voice keeps going, which I find slightly weird. When personally I'd rather it concentrate on the video, not the voice. You know, I don't think there doesn't seem to be an option to say, you know, if you're going to struggle with one, can you struggle with that one? Because if nothing else, I can answer questions afterwards. What I can't do is show you stuff it can't show you, if you know what I mean. So it is. I'm trying, Tenchi. I'm trying to make this good. I'm trying to make this stream fun for people. Well, as fun as lazy making can be, I suppose. I'm still not convinced it's entirely spectator sport, but it's good to have some. It's good to see you pop in. Well, that's a long bobbin, isn't it? How come it's taken me till now to notice how long that bobbin is? It's just. Yeah. I am distinctly looking forward to the end of the spangles. I truly am. Just looking at them makes me kind of tense. As I say, this one, this chunky fellow with his tiny spangle, he's glorious, and he's fine. If they were all like him, it would be fine. But it's people like this one, the extra thing with the most colossal spangle in the history of spangles. I mean, that's a chandelier of a spangle, that is. And so unnecessary. The idea is that the pillow should be on an angle, and therefore the weight assists. Previously I used bobbins, which are more like this tiny thin stick, but end in a point and don't have spangles. But they are so light, you know, that even a kind of almost fart could blow more off the cushion and cause them to tangle. So they really were frustrating to work with. Now, if they made them out of heavier stuff, so for example, I was wondering, and I'm sure you'll understand this, first of all, 3D printing. 3D printing should be a thing. You know, I'm really sorely tempted to get a 3D printer so that I can print bobbins. So I can have pretty coloured bobbins, well, not hugely decorated, but, you know, blue bobbins, red bobbins kind of thing. Have coloured bobbins, but I could design them exactly how I like, and potentially make them more like my chunky friend here, but inside this part, put a ball bearing, for example, give it a bit of weight, so that it becomes part of the inside. Same with doing it maybe with resin, so you put, maybe make resin ones, but again you put something in the lower half to give them a little bit of weight, but not a lot of weight, just a bit of weight, so that they are bottom centric, should we call it. And I really have thought about, getting some resin and making some moulds and 3D printer, and I just don't need to be buying more stuff. My credit card bill for next month, bear in mind my credit card bill comes in on the 20th of the month, is already like £800, so I really do not need to be adding to this. I need to be decreasing my spending, not increasing my spending. So I do not need to be buying, 300 quid's worth of, 3D printer, even though the more crafting types I do, the more useful one could be, because you can make shuttles for your loom, you can make the shuttle bobbins, and you were not necessary. And you can, you can do all sorts of things, and you can make those, and then I can make some lace bobbins, and I could make maybe some bobbin holders, so that, instead of covering them with cloths to try and keep them from running around, you put them in a device of your own making to stop the bobbins that you made from moving. So maybe one of the things you do is, on the chunky bobbins, is have a flat side, so that they can move around, but there's also a flatter side to help them, kind of stop rolling at this point. All these kinds of things that you can do, and you can experiment, because you can make a couple and see how they went, and then adjust it, make some more, and they wouldn't cost you a fortune to try, except for the fact that you spend £500 on a printing machine. But it's that kind of, there are lots of things. So for example, I can make something to hold certain things that don't want to live in certain environments. I could, I have enough technical knowledge to design a model and, get it printed. I can't make, orcs and dragons and things, because I'm just not artistic, but I can make functional, practical, shaped objects, shall we call it. And obviously when it comes to a bobbin, there's only really a couple of elements of the bobbin that are, let's call it, sacred, and that is that you have something to hang on to, and an area to store the yarn, preferably interspaced between some form of blocks to stop it slipping and sliding, because as some of these, you can't see it on these particular set of bobbins, but some of them are looser than others. Just quickly lifting up, because that was one I spotted that was terrible, and now I can't see it. But there are some that just kind of slide up and down. This one's thinking about it, but yeah, this one's a good example. So this is just sliding up and down and no use to anybody. But if you could slide it all the way up and down the bobbin, obviously it would just fall off. So you need some form of knobble at the top, so that you can have your knot that you can create a bit of tension by pulling on the bobbin a bit, but not a lot, because it just has thread. And you want some level of dent, stroke, barriers. It doesn't have to be a dent, but a barrier at either end to stop the thread, to define where the thread will stay within the confines of. And not a lot else. And obviously, you don't want them too long, because then like, having knitting needles dangling off the bottom of it. So 4 inches just seems to be a kind of general de rigueur feeling. They seem to have decided that the length of your pinky and your hand is a maximum kind of area, although obviously sort of this one's a bit bigger. But again, if I put the base of my hand on it, right, instead of finishing about, it's only an inch longer than the rest, but it is considerably longer, and it makes it a bit weird. So this is kind of a standard length. I mean, even if I get my chunky one of these are all roughly the same length. You can't see that. So if I do this, they are roughly the same length. So 4 inches seems to be a kind of average bobbin length. So again, it wouldn't be that hard to make some, because they're only 4 inches long. And it's, I think it would be quite nice to make my own bobbins, to design, to be able to make any bobbin I wanted, and then should I want more of them, I can just kind of make more of them over a period of time, and pick some silly colours or whatever, floats my boat. But to have the ability to make more bobbins should I feel shorter bobbins would be a nice thing. You're saying 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. It is, so making my bobbins really is quite something I would like to do. I mean, personally, it would be great to make them out of wood, really wood, and then, maybe drill up the bottom and insert a small metal rod to give it a bit of weight at the bottom, or even a teepee-shaped piece of metal at the bottom, so that it gives them something to stop them flapping, but it's not that much wider than the bobbin, so that they won't catch on each other, but that they would not roll either, or wouldn't roll very far. Almost give it a wing, so that it kind of stabilises it, so it can only move kind of like this, like it does with Spangle, it can move a bit, but it would only move a bit. And so the idea of 3D printing stuff really is an interesting part of what I would like to do at some point, but I need a 3D printer. Making some wooden ones would be awesome, but again, you need a friggin' lathe for that, and that's not something that's going to happen kind of particularly easily. I don't know why I'm doing these the hard way, but now I started doing the hard way, it seems a bit strange to be doing swapping over, but let's quickly swap over. That feels too many. I feel like I've gone too far. Two. Yeah, I did. So yeah, I do have some ideas and some plans, and in an ideal world, and should you get the bonus of your dreams or whatever, it would be nice to buy a 3D printer and print off some bobbins and give them a go, or do some resin ones, because you can do some really nice resin ones. 3D printing stuff tends to be a bit matte. Now I'm not saying it is, because I've seen plenty of shiny things, because you wipe it with alcohol and kind of melt plastic slightly and it becomes shiny. But resin stuff has a feel to it. It's a bit like glass, but not glass, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like cheap glass. Fake glass. And by having fake glass ones, that would be quite nice. I do have, oddly enough, although I think they're plastic, this one, because as I was pointing out, this bobbin is a lot heavier, and I also like the fact that while it has a spangle, for want of a better word, it's just a kind of pendant thing glued on the bottom, but this bobbin is so much heavier than, where is it? Can you ever find things that you're looking for when you want one? I had a whole pile of them on my table, but I think I've covered them up with other bobbins, which is pretty, there's one, right down the bottom. See, this is actually more resiny than plastic, because this is a lot heavier than the wooden ones, but this is heavier still, and if I had, a crap ton of these, I would probably be quite happy with these as my bobbins for this. But it's not glass, I think. I mean, I'm no expert, but it's good to hit it with. It might be. I don't think it's glass, but it could be. The glass bobbins would be quite nice. So, this is spangle bobbins. If you could get glass ones, maybe you'd be happier. But right here, right now, not spangles. So we definitely need to return to the non-spangled bobbins and hide this box of bobbins in the darkest depths of my loft somewhere. Or flog it on eBay, whatever. Because I can't see me return. She's just looking down, wondering what she did with the box now. Oh, there's the box. Box is right next to me. I have many more bobbins in a box, and I have a bit of a pile of bobbins as the ones I was winding yesterday. So I have many more spangled bobbins than these. In fact, quite a few more. Probably this is going to be a cast failure, but I can vaguely bring in this box. I have, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's about 100 bobbins of spangled variety. And I've got, well, the other pin that I wound yesterday, and then I've got a handful of loose ones on my table, for which are for finishing off the winding, because obviously, while I've got those, I don't think I've got enough to get the bobbins. It's only a handful, I think I'm like 3 pairs out or something. But until I need to count them, and then I need to count the pinholes and decide actually how many do I have. I think it's like 3. So it's a close thing, but I do kind of, yeah. 1, 2, 3. I've got a feeling that's it. So you will for that one, yep. This is why I count, because obviously I've got 3 pairs of bobbins there. Which also means I've got to add one. Right. See, I knew something wasn't right, even though I was counting them. Something wasn't quite as it should have been. And I still can't tell whether they're under or over without lifting them up. I guess I grabbed the next pair, but apparently I didn't. That was the last row. They'll start merging into one. And I can't see, so let's pull out the pin. See, I didn't add some, so I need to steal 2 more of you. Because this way around there should be 4 on the 4 pairs, not 3 pairs, as there is going the other way. This has got another one where the thread's just gone all loose and crap on the bobbin. And it is a little bit annoying, but never mind. Such is the thing. So you are out of the picture, and you need to be pushed a bit more there so you're out of the way, so I don't work you by accident. Still pin. I think when I get to the end of this corner, I might call this a day for today, or at least for now, and maybe do some later this evening. Although it is 3:30, so we shall see. I might want to shoot things or blast things. I don't generally play games with guns. I do much more of the sword magic, but basically we're still called shooting things. So I may feel the need to kill things later, which can be a thing. After all, that's worth on that. Check before we start again. So I just I do want to make sure I give myself a bit of a chance to chill out and enjoy my weekend. Not that I don't enjoy doing this because otherwise I would be doing it, but obviously I want to make sure. Look at the spangle on that. It's clearly the friend of the other one, but holy crap, who needs a spangle that big? I mean, that's just unnecessary, people. That is just singularly unnecessary. It can't even lie flat for it. It just can't even be flat. Just the spangle so big and made of wire. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So yes. And you do come off this end. Oh, no, that's good. Alright, number of bobbins this time. Pin. Oops, so much wrong. Should have had something for lunch, really, shouldn't I? I was going to say that to be sure, right? So you went wrong. And the answer was, the second one didn't twist properly here. So you need to go over, under, over. So yes, we're quite a bit of progress today. I mean, it's not like we finished the square, because, that'd be serious progress, but I have got to a point where a quarter usually, on the last square, I got to a point where, even though obviously I was sitting in the ideal position, I had only a light to worry about, I was not distracted by things, I was not explaining other things, I was sitting watching, or listening to something, so kind of me in my best moment, I did generally get it down to a quarter of a square is sort of 2 or 3 days. The first quarter took me about a week, but it is 2 or 3 days depending on how much time I can do it for, because obviously again, in the most perfect scenario, I can do quite a few more hours of it, but then of course I also can be munching on sweets and snacks and go for bio breaks and all that kind of thing, so there is a considerable difference in almost the mentality of starting that, because you are not confined by anything at that point, and you are not necessarily a part of it. 1, 2, 3. I've done it again, haven't I? I have done it again. Christ's sake, it's because you're nearing the end and your brain's starting to rot. Your brain's starting to rot. See on the pin. Add 2 bobbins. On twisty. Add 2 bobbins. Now sad. Pin pusher is also quite good for returning threads to more of a ground level. See, that definitely still looks wrong. I'm absolutely adamant there's a mistake about there. It just looks very thin and weedy just there, so I've got a feeling that's. So I get my crochet hook and we zoom in a bit. You might be able to see that right about here, it just looks thin and weedy for no apparent reason, and that shouldn't look thin and weedy, so that's another thing. Tell you what, moving into the bobbins is possibly not the most gloriously interesting thing, so let me zoom in a bit more, and maybe you can see. Yes, at the bottom of that, so that's okay. Obviously this is the working line here, but you can have a slightly better view of the threads crossing and the path that I take with them and how they get to the other side. Is that 4? I think that's 4. 1, 2, 3. Got 1 more to go. Yep. You need to scoot off over there a bit more because you're in the way. So, I'll probably screw it up back there somewhere and it'll come out in the wash and I'll end up having to undo or frig somehow things to make it work, and That's harder than in, say, crochet or knitting. You know, if you don't increase or decrease correctly somewhere and you've got the wrong number of stitches, well, you can knit 3 together instead of 2 and kind of go, oh, I didn't make a mistake later, and, you know, now we're back on track. With lace making, you know, if bobbins pairs aren't in the right places, then it's quite hard to, you can't really double use a pair of bobbins to try and, you know, help them get to where they should be. So it is usually a case of you have to undo it, and sometimes you might have to undo a lot. And I've got a horrible feeling that I will have to undo a fair bit to get to that point, but there can occasionally be ways to frig it, and if it means that, for example, all of these are one pin to the left or something, you can stretch it and just make it look horrible, and it will sort out. But it is not ideal, really is not, and it's slightly less forgiving for mistakes. It does depend on what a mistake is, obviously. If a mistake is you didn't twist it enough, or you did the wrong kind of stitch, or you forgot the closing bit to make it square for the rose ground, you can get away with those. You can't magic bobbins into places where there aren't any, and that's where it does go. Okay, which is why yesterday I had to undo a bit, because I missed throwing out bobbins at the end, and when I came to needing them later, well, they weren't there, and so I had to undo it, because there was no bobbin to use. Even if it being the wrong pair of bobbins for some reason, that almost doesn't matter that they're the wrong pair of bobbins, as long as it's a pair of bobbins where you need them. It's kind of okay, but if they're not where you need them, then it's not okay. So, we've done that, and I'm going to scoot it back to the other side. Throw a pair out, 1, 2, 3, and pull in my last pair before I forget, and do a dingus and do that again, and stab it with a pin. Stab these out. And we have finished the... See, from here, the best thing to do next is that row of cross stitch, which, as you can see, it's only 3 pairs of bobbins to add, so it's not screwing up my bobbin count a lot. And once I've done that, that would, you know, I could arguably go a little bit of the way down. So obviously, as a general rule, bobbins go straight down. So anything to the left of the last pin, arguably, has a level of could be work. But it's, so if I did that bit, I could then come out as far as, say, here, which would let me fill in all my rose grounds, which would let me fill in this and the other triangle. So I could, but it's much better to say, then do this strip, then this strip, then this bit, then this bit, then this bit. It just works better in your head to do chunks. And it is an unwritten rule as to where these chunks fall, because it's personal choice. Because, as I said, I could arguably always just keep working across the lines and diagonally do whatever comes up next. But in terms of, for example, like this, where you end up skipping a pin, you need the worker to move across. So it has to be available. So while obviously this side goes across, but you'd be working downwards, so you'd be starting a lot, but not. It makes it more complicated and more prone to mistakes. So you end up doing, like I'm here, identifying the next chunk. Now, I could, as I say, I might only do the ground up to here, so add these many bobbins, do the ground up to here, which allows this kind of here, which allows me to do the next row, allows me to do this next bit, and this bit, and then I'll do this bit, and then this bit, and then this bit, and then this bit, and then, you know, this bit. So that's quite likely how that will work, because you do not want, let me zoom out so you can see a bit more of the quarter, but, you know, if I do this bit, 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 admittedly, obviously, you've got to do the bits in between, but if I do that kind of order, it's the working and keeping track of yourself. And, you know, as you've seen, I made rose ground bit, then I made the bar, then I made this. I could have gone across, but I would just be far more, you know, I'm not saying maybe it's my brain, but I find it a lot easier to work in sections. And they're not predetermined sections. It's not like someone draws a big fat black line and says, you will work to here and go and work with this part over here. That's not how lace making works. Lace making, they give you kind of, here is the starting pin, here are the pins, off you go. And you have to work from top to bottom, because obviously, you know, if we look, we'll pick this pin here, this pin needs a thread from there, but it also needs a thread from this rose ground. So I have to do this rose ground, which means I need threads from there and threads from there, so you work it back. But if I look next, so I could, do, say, this chunk of rose ground in this section here, because it follows on. So I have all the threads that I would need to make this rose ground. But then there's the rest of this section here that is not being, I wouldn't finish. So if I do this section of the cloth stitch bit, I could arguably, and also do the ground bit and the rest of this bit. If I do this little bit, I would then do the ground bit, I would then do the next bit of cloth stitch, I would then do all of the rose grounds, I would then do the cloth stitch bit, and then do the ground bit, and then potentially this cloth stitch bit, before going back and doing this bit ground, maybe the and this cloth stitch bit, the rose bits, the other cloth stitch bit, and finally the last ground bit, and go, huzzah, I finished a quarter, and hold a small pattern. So it is important sometimes to realise you don't have to break things up. There are no specific true orders other than, if you want, you can't just go and work this rose ground without getting its 2 parent parts done, and then to get that done, you need that done, to get that done, you need that done, and so you end up working out. And so sometimes it looks like you have a lot of choice, because part of you will go, well, surely you've got all the threads to work this bit. Well, yes, I do, but I have to work these rose grounds. So I could work the rose grounds and do that corner, then these two. Actually, I can't tell you the input from that side. But you could, for example, start on some of them, but you end up going, well, if I do that, am I using that? Your brain starts, as I said, like Taylor, your brain starts overthinking it, and going, shouldn't I? Is this the right one? Is that really a pair? Should that be a pair? Because if you think every time a pair meets a pin, it could be swapping bases. Now, for an awful lot of this work, they don't, because you work a half stitch at, say, this pin, and then put the pin and do another half stitch, so both bobbins are back where they started, but they've done little shenanigans in the middle. For some of them, you do swap them around. When you come to your rose round, you've got 2 coming in from top left and top right. You do a half stitch, so they swap places, and that makes the kind of square shape. Then you do a half pin, half in the top of the rose ground, do half pin, half on the left, half pin, half, so they stay where they are, but you then do 2 half stitches at the bottom to make it square, and you swap the pairs around again. So they do move around, and if you forget a bit, well, they move around even more, or don't move around even more, depending on what they're doing. But there are stitches where they move a lot, there are stitches where they don't move at all. Half stitch, which I could be doing, and was a consideration for these more solid parts to make a denser kind of, it looks a little bit like this ground stitch area. I mean, if I move these bobbins out of the way, you can see the ground stitch area here. It makes a more kind of, it looks almost more zoomed out. It's very similar in look, but it's much denser. But of course it's going to be holy, which of course being a curve, holy is a thing. But I actually quite like the fact that this would end up with almost a shadow on a wall on a sunny day. So the fact that North's going to be up there to look at it is completely by the by. But the idea of it casting a shadow quite appeals. So I've stuck with cross stitch for it. The only major difference is that you only do 3 of the moves, not 4. So if you think of a cross stitch is move 1, move 2, move 3, well, you don't do this last cross. So it kind of ends up that bobbins don't stay in their pairs, they end up separated, best in the colours to be honest, but they end up separated, but they don't then form a cloth, they form kind of triangles. And It does mean that it has a bit more light to it, and it probably would still cast shadow. But I decided that the bit, which is quite tidy looking, or except for that slightly screwed up bit earlier that I'm still convinced is wrong. Oh, did you hear that? The sigh of the dog. There are lots of memes going around about, kind of dog, nothing smells louder than the dog who can sleep all day and has his every, being paid for. It is very true. Mr. Paws, sighing there, like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders, when we got up reasonably late today, and we were not really ready to get up. I was, and they were not. The whole kind of, I almost had to boot them off bed because they weren't going to come downstairs. Yes, my dog sleep on my bed by me. We came downstairs, we didn't really want to go out in the gardens to do garden things because, well, it's winter out there, and frankly, we weren't awake yet, so we curled up back on the couch and went back to sleep. I then did a couple things, started to stream, it's 3.5 hours in, and other than right at the very beginning where we had a bit of Zoomy because we'd had biscuit, we've mostly been sleeping. So where is the stress in that life? Seriously. How? How can you be stressed, dog? I'm the one that has to earn the money. I'm the one that's got to do lots of things at work. I'm the one that's got to do it well enough to keep my job. And yet, all you really have to do is maybe bark at some people who come to the house, but 99.9999, in fact, so far, all of them are ones that were permitted to come to the house. No one has tried to break in. So, in the 4 years you have been here, well, actually it's 4 years at the end of the month, but in the nearly 4 years, you have not had to lift a paw, really, because everyone else was allowed. So, seriously, you're paid for nothing. I food and house you, and all you have to do is not shit my shoes.